It's definitely worth. I mean, even with all the amenities of the other one, like having nice walls in there and having like a designated bed and stuff, being able to stand up is definitely a higher quality of life than what I had before.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it makes a difference, isn't it? You don't want to have a
yeah,
humpback.
yeah. Well, I think I'm developing it a little bit. I've been climbing a lot recently, which I think
Saw that.
is combative. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, I guess I mean, so when I usually, my podcast is it's not really about necessarily talking about the technique of doing art at all. It's more about like the why of doing this stuff in the first place.
Yeah.
It's like we're from one perspective, we're traveling around the sun at 65,000 miles per hour in the middle of one solar system and one galaxy in the midst of millions of galaxies. And it's easy to, if that's true, it's easy to feel that the things that we're doing in our day-to-day lives are a little bit more meaningless, especially like drawing and painting. It's like, how does somebody find meaning in something like, what is objectively, from one perspective, rubbing charcoal on a piece of paper, like, I really believe that the thing that holds people back most when it comes to being artists and creative people is their capacity to believe that what they are doing actually matters, and doing it well actually matters,
Yeah.
like why spend time studying art and trying to make beautiful images when you could just be playing video games or drinking with your friends or eating junk food,
Yeah.
like and I know we've talked about it before, but you spent a good portion of your youth traveling around the world and trying to see as much of it as you possibly could.
Yeah.
um,
Well, that was a search for meaning as well. I mean, I think
yeah,
that's if you've got a brain at all, you're always searching for meaning. I mean, I wonder if even fish do. You see fish seem to be they're always going up a stream though, aren't they? They're always trying to find their eggs or something like that. So they have one
yeah,
meaning possibly. But yeah, the art thing, I've struggled with it for years. That existential thing where you go, what's the meaning of everything? What's the point of me doing this when I should be a doctor or something like that?
yeah,
Like my dad was he was a very pragmatic man. He would say, food first. Like survival first. Everything else
yeah,
is just silly. He thought that art was silly. And I think he's come around to the fact now that maybe that's not really the case. Because if you look at all the great cities in the world, people don't go there to forage for food. They go there to see art, generally, don't
yeah,
they? You go to New
yeah,
York and you think art. And you think, if you encompass all arts, people go to the ballet and they go to music and they look at art. They go to the art museums. That's what I do anyway. So
yeah,
I kind of validate what I do in that it's timeless. It's gonna outlive me, and it brings great joy to people. I mean, I find great joy in art, and if I hadn't got art when I was younger, I might have been very depressed, I think.
yeah, right,
And I see a lot of people that do go through depression because they don't seem to have what we have. We have art.
yeah,
You have to
right,
have something. So
yeah,
I think it's, you know, we're going to talk about this for a while, and I don't want to go
yeah, yeah,
down that black hole, but there are
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
there are pits and
yeah,
troughs, isn't there?
yeah,
And there's great highs with art as well. But I
yeah.
think I think it's valuable, is the bottom line.
Absolutely. Well, I think I mean, it's strange. I mean, I think that every artist I've talked to, everyone I've ever talked to, has struggled with that nihilism, has struggled with that
Yeah,
darkness at every level. You could be the most famous illustrator on the planet and still struggle with nihilism and feel like what you do doesn't matter. And you could be a student who's just starting out on their journey and feel like these little wins that you're having, getting a few likes on Instagram or somebody buying one of your artwork pieces for $10, that could be a bigger high or a bigger peak than some illustrator selling something that they just made for $1 million.
yeah, it's
Um,
true. I don't think. I think when it came to art at the beginning, I'll go back to one time. I remember I made a piece of art, and it was the first time I had any success that was acknowledged. It won a competition in the newspaper. It was the Belfast Telegraph where I came from, and they invited me to this big grand house, and later on, someone at the big grand house said to me later, I'd like to buy that piece off you. And I thought, no, it's my best piece. I'm going to keep it forever. And then about 2 years later, I found it at the bottom of a box in a shed in the garden, and it was all moldy and musty. And I could have sold it to that person. He would have treasured it, put it on his wall, and I would have had some money in that point. So I thought it was dead precious then. But when I looked at it through the must, it was horrible. It was a terrible piece of art in my eyes because I'd progressed. So it's you get this preciousness about art when you're younger, and the strange thing is you have less of it when you get older. Like I've just painted a gigantic piece there. It's going to be 7 feet tall in its frame, and I'm happy to let it go. I'm happy to put that in the post because I know that collector is going to put it in his own art museum. He's building an art museum in Singapore. And he's really going to treasure that. It'll never end up in the bottom of a skip or something. It might be. I don't know. Well, we never know. We know because Alma Tadema's artwork ended up in an alleyway once. Someone bought it for the frame and threw the artwork in the alleyway. You never know. Yeah. But it will at least outlive us. It's valuable.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I think that's part of the purpose of it is that it's way more about the process of doing it and the actual adventure of creating something than it is about the final product. There is that cliche, it is the fundamental cliche of reality. I think that it's, journey before destination. Like you spend all this time training, doing exercises, just doing all this work, tens of thousands of hours of work to make just a few images, like 30 images, 40 images, 100 images in your entire lifetime. And like people do that knowing that eventually they're going to die. It's not going to matter. Part of my thinking with all this stuff is that it matters to the degree that you accept that it actually matters,
Yeah. Like
the amount of work that you put into it actually makes it matter more than if you hadn't done any work to, any planning or any if you hadn't assigned any meaning to it in the first place.
Yeah. It's got to have meaning. I think that's why I got out of advertising. It had no meaning for me at all. Oh, the only meaning it had was it was going to sell something, and something that I had no interest in selling. I was selling it for someone else. So, but that was an adventure. It was an adventure being in advertising and seeing a world that, to me today, seems like a horrible world. And even though I lived it, I was in advertising. And today, if I see an advert, I just turn it straight off. It just irritates the life out of me. So I was in this business that I didn't like. But at the time, that was sort of outside of my purview. For some reason, I was enveloped in this world and saw no evils in it. And just casually walked in and out of these places until I got numb and thought to myself, what am I doing here? This means not. It's back to the meaning. This doesn't mean anything to me. This is pointless. And then I just shut it down, just like that. It's the craziest thing. Like you did, Christian. Apartments be damned. I'm getting in a van now. I'm going to drive around the country. I did that with my career. I just went, no more. And you know how you were saying, Christian, we were doing the van. I said, can you send me a green screen of it? He says, I want to be a purist. It has to be in the van. I was a purist then. I went, if I'm gonna say no to advertising, I really mean it. I'm gonna burn all these bridges, and I'm never gonna look back. I have to be that solid, and I did. I never did another advertising piece. Walked away.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, some people might be like, that was a mistake. You could have made way more money. You could be an executive somewhere. You could have all the success. But I think part of the irony of all this stuff is you could just decide that you don't value it anymore, and then it just doesn't have any meaning to you. It just isn't important.
Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story about why I think art was important, Christian. And it was the time when I was in advertising, and there was this. They were trying to sell Bagoo oil, it was called, and I think they were trying to sell, was it kangaroo oil or emu oil to Americans? And so they're trying to sell this oil that would cure all ills. It was schlocky, It was think about it. It was snake oil salesman. But it
yeah, literally.
Yeah, so they got in touch with me and they said, we want you to do this. At this point, I was the highest paid illustrator in Brisbane. And they said, we want you to do this. And I was picking and choosing jobs. I was very successful at it, even though I had a numbness to it. And he says, we want this Bagoo man. and they said, can you give us a price for it? It's a black and white illustration. And I thought, I can do a black and white illustration in the morning. So I put in my usual price for it. Now, I don't want to sound braggadocious or anything like that. I'm just telling you the facts of what prices were at that point. And compared to the old illustrators, they were peanuts, But I had a standard price by that point that I'd built up steadily, very steadily, to a black and white illustration was $950. So $950 was the price I put in. And by that point, I was starting to get a bit savvy with business. So advertising taught me business. It really did. They taught me how to invoice and everything, and how to ask for purchase order numbers to make sure I was paid. So I invoiced it, and at the bottom of the invoice, I wrote Asia Pacific rights. And I sent the invoice through. And a guy came back to me on the phone, and he says, I'm just wondering about the bottom part of your invoice. It says Asia Pacific rights. I says, yeah, it's that encompasses the Asia Pacific region we live in. He says, oh, this is for the world. This is world rights. I says, you mean a buyout? He said, yeah. I says, oh, let me send you another quote through. So I sent another quote through for $5,000. And I thought, this is nothing. It's Clevenger. It's a drop in the ocean to this big company. And a guy came back on the phone, and he says, we can't pay you that price. And I says, that's fine. There's no problem. He said, what about the original prices? Well, I said, well, that can't happen. So on and on it went. There was like 5 phone calls from these different people. And eventually they came back and made me feel bad. He says, okay, we'll pay your price, right? But begrudgingly. And I had a really bad taste in my mouth. I thought, this big company that is going to make $1 squillion with the snake oil product, and they're miserable about this. Now, oh, you're still there, Christian. Is that the 15-minute camera? You're muted again. I can see that your mic is muted, so you just got to click on it, the bottom left of Zoom.
There we go.
There you go. Yeah.
That's
So anyway,
sorry about that.
long story short, Christian, I went in. They says, can you come in for a meeting? I thought, oh God, a meeting just to do a black and white illustration. So I went into the meeting, and there was like 10 executives in a big mahogany desk and a gigantic window overlooking the city of Brisbane, right? And it's a beautiful city. Big. If you ever come to it, Christian, you'll be amazed by how cosmopolitan but small. It's like a Jetson city. It's like the Jetsons. Everything's clean. And I just, once upon a time I'd been very intimidated, and I'm sure that was the reason for it. And they had at the end of the table somebody I hadn't talked to yet, and it was a woman which was all bejangled. She had all gold and hairspray out to here. She was the boss. She ran the agency, and she was lovely. So all the minions were horrible because they're scratching their way up. That's how I saw it after the fact. They're scratching their way up to try and please her, and she's displeased because they've treated me so badly, because she's getting the feeling now that I've been treated badly. I can see it in her. Someone's obviously told her something or other. She's angry at them. I can see them all. They're all sort of hunched over. And there's the one guy, the art director in the corner, who's my mate, It's just me and him. Like, we're dressed like this, and they're all in suits. Yeah. And he looks kind of cagey. Anyway, so she's lovely, and I'm just talking directly to her. And it's wonderful. She says, well, Patrick, it's wonderful to have you on board. We can't wait to get the product on the market. Thank you very much for coming in. Just before we got up to leave, one of the guys pulled the trump card out because he's a scratchy. He says, Patrick, you weren't the first person we called to get this artwork done. And I says, oh, who else did you call? And he says, we called, try to remember the name of the company now. It doesn't matter. Let's call them Smengingers. So we call Smengingers. I says, I know them. They're very good. I says, why didn't you go with them? He says, well, we thought you had a better reputation. And so he says, and here's what they showed us. And you will agree that the quality there is as good as yours or better. Cheeky. Can you believe that, Christian?
Oh, man.
Can you believe
it's crazy.
The ignorance of that? And this is supposed to be a higher class of people with a suit and tie. And he threw 4 illustrations on the desk, right? I says, they're gorgeous. I said, I did them.
Yeah. Oh, man.
You'd have seen his face. Oh, Christian. Yeah. It was the greatest moment.
Hilarious.
It was so brilliant.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I said, and it was like, it was just one of those karma moments. I had been in Smengingers when I first came to Brisbane, and they invited me in. And as I was talking to him, a job came in, and he says, are you happy to stay for the day and do this job? I says, He says, whatever you need paid, and he gives huge money on it because it was a mining department. I
Yeah.
thought, that's going to be good for me because I've only just got here. And so I did about 10 illustrations in a day, and he paid me really handsomely. He even put an express check in. I walked across the road and cashed it from his studio. It was one of those when you have a perfect day? It was that perfect day. And I walked out into the setting sun and went, man, what a day that was. Who would have expected that? And it was from that. That's what it was from. It was those mining illustrations. There were all these lovely little, flat colored illustrations. That's how I could do them all. There was no detail. They were all flat colored. They were lovely. When I saw them again, I went, wow, they're nice. Oh, I did them. They're mine.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Nice. So those guys, I don't know what meaning they're searching for in life. I just loved doing that illustration. I know it was for advertising, but I got my head set into it that it's for me. I'm going to do this for me. And if they use it in their mining adverts, that's fine. That's a different thing. For me, it's the art. For them, it's their product. But what a moment to realize that when you're an artist, you have there's always, I think with every artist, you tell me, Christian, if you feel the same, there's always a feeling that you're a little bit below society. You always feel that people look down on you a little bit. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you feel that? Like sometimes you'll even talk to someone that's in corporate and you'll say you're an artist and they'll kind of go, oh, really? You're poor then. They have that. Right. They don't say the words, but you can feel it. You can feel it. And so I always felt that. But that day I walked out, and I walked out with the woman that ran the agency, and I chatted with her. And that day I felt, you know what? Art is better. It's better than sitting there in that suit and living that life of scratching and trying to burn the guy beneath you all the time. Now, not everybody in a suit's like that, because I met lots of people in suits and they were lovely people. But there's definitely an element where it's a cutthroat world, and they have that cutthroat attitude that goes with it. If you're not ready to kill the beast next to you, then you're not going to survive. That's the attitude that got me out of advertising. And I don't want to be with that gang, especially on nights out where they're all hitting shots and stuff, and talking about finance. My eyes just glaze over and I just fall asleep like that, So
and I don't think anyone ever aspires or plans to be a guy like that. And I think most people would be like, if I'm never like that, I would rather just not have a job at all, But I think there's something that clicks in somebody's brain where it's like they start to value the wrong things, Like they make a fundamental mistake early on where they buy a house that's too big, so they can't afford their mortgage, or at least comfortably afford their lifestyle. So they start to justify more and more of that kind of bullshit at work, to the point where it's like they're willing to try to embarrass somebody publicly in order to, it's like, but if they hadn't made that initial mistake of overextending on the stuff that they wanted, they wouldn't have had to do that, and they wouldn't have had to, I guess, stoop that low,
Yeah. Isn't that funny, Christian, you should bring that up, because I have seen that. It's the great thing about having lived many decades is that you can look back and see that. You're seeing it very young. You're seeing that right now. And I have seen that time and again. I remember a guy that I had met. I grew up in a very, very poor. It's sub-poor. How could I compare it? I think Joe Jusko told me that was very similar to his upbringing. Lower New York, or Harlem, New York in the 70s. That's the kind of, if you want to put it a sort of comparison to what kind of life I grew up in, it was the Harlem in the 70s. Really dirt poor. Everyone was on the bones of their asses. That's where I grew up. And so for me it was a big reach to overreach. For me, I was happy to just have a roof over my head. And so when we bought our little house, it's a big house, but it was ramshackled. I thought it was wildly overextended then, but people were buying big, giant, fancy, brand new houses where I was painting this one up. I was fixing it up. And we owned it pretty quickly, And so it was basically the old American dream where you buy an old house, you fix it up, and that's yours, it's your house, and now it's a nice house. So that's what I had. And then I met these guys that had bought those big houses. And then years later I met, I was talking to my dad. I said, what happened to that guy who did well from our place? Because he came from the same place. And he bought that big house. He says, oh, he's in jail.
Yeah.
I says, what for? He says, oh, fraud. He couldn't afford that house. You know, so he was doing all these dodgy things to own that, to look good,
to have the status, right?
The status, yeah. And so I'm now living in this millionaire suburb that wasn't one, and there's like only two of us left. There's only two fixer-uppers left. There's me and the guy across the street, and we're just watching these giant houses go build. There's one right now, right there, blocking out the light. And there used to be an old guy that lived there, and he had the loveliest little house, and I used to go up on his porch and sit on a swing with him, right? You can imagine it in the sun. It was lovely. And I thought, and one day a bulldozer came, and he's in a nursing home at this point. And I was looking at him lamenting. I said, oh no, his house still there. I says, he should really have that all cleared out by now. You know, I could still see pictures on the wall, through the window, through the curtains. And a bulldozer came, and it pushed the palm trees through. I thought the palm trees would have been cut down in pieces. Bulldozer came with a big JCB, they're called, with a big nose on it, with the articulated arm, pushed the palm trees down, took its big claw and just crushed it through the roof like that, and smashed the house. And it had an air conditioner on the side of it, you know, a big, beautiful, brand new one, smashed, crushed. I don't know what was in that house, fridges. By the time it was toys and stuff like that, it was horrible. It was the most disrespectful thing I had ever seen. It was just horrendous. A whole life was just crushed by a big bulldozer. And they scraped it on into the earth, and now there's this big giant, what does someone call it? A friend of mine once called them a McDonald mansion or something. It looks like a mansion, but it's not really. You know, it has false pillars and stuff, that kind of thing. That's what's there right next door. A big Mac mansion. That's what they called it.
Yeah.
So, Big Mac. Have you heard that term? Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. Big Mac mansion has just gone up and blocked out all my light. It's almost like it's evil. You know, it's like this entity right there.
Well, I guess part of it too. I think it almost can't be considered evil because there's this good intentions behind it. You know, it's like, let's build beautiful houses. Let's try and be better and do more. You know, let's try to improve on what's already existing. You know, and that justification, that like decision of I know better, or a decision that, you know, what was there previous doesn't matter, allows that kind of expansion to happen all over the planet. You know, it's like you can go anywhere in the United States I've seen, or anywhere in the world, and you see these massive structures being built that are shoddy. They're not necessarily like made of good materials, but they look like mansions.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
You have people paying, you know, an entire life's worth of income in order to be in this one spot. You know.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I don't know how they can afford that. Well, I do actually. So they buy, it's all finance. They buy early, they sell that house, and they buy another one, they sell that house, and now they can afford this McMansion. But what it means is that they're always financed to the hilt throughout their entire life. And to live like that, I just got no capacity for me to feel that weight constantly on my chest, you know? They've got another mortgage now, and they're like 60, you know? They're gonna mortgage to the grave. So they never really own it. They really never own this thing that they want so badly. And also they relax and, you know, I don't want to bore you with it, but they relax the guidelines. So once upon a time you had to be, you know, so far away from the fence to build. And then they relaxed it, and then they relaxed it, and they relaxed it. And now this house is right at the fence like that. And now the owners aren't happy enough. Can we ask for a further relaxation from the people next door and get it right against the fence? You know, like that? Which means the roof is hanging over our fence practically, you know? It's horrific. It's horrible. I'm just looking at it now. Horrible. Yeah. But, you know, there's life for you. There's life, you know? You have
well, I think it's odd. I mean, I think I found that there are like traps that people get caught up in, you know, like everybody is susceptible to some sort of trap, you know, whether it's, you know, a big house, a certain job, like having a certain amount of followers on Instagram, you know, working on certain projects, anything, you know. I think there is, like, everyone is exposed to a certain, like, I don't know if you can call it a temptation, but I'm going to call it a temptation that brings out the potential worst in somebody, you know. And like you were saying before, it's like, you know, people buy houses they can't afford, and then they become people that, you know, they wouldn't go and commit fraud otherwise, but because they are so desperate to be able to afford this house, they do, they take advantage of people,
Yeah.
they do shitty things.
Yeah, they get desperate. It's desperation. So that, I think you've identified the two things, because you identified one of them that I clearly identified in my life, that ego is the biggest problem we deal with. If you can kill your ego, then you're going to be a better person right away.
Yeah.
And and desperation. And no, we've all been desperate. Yeah, I'm sitting here like a preacher. I've been desperate and done things I'm ashamed of. Of course I have. Everyone has. Let ye without sin cast the first stone. We've all done it. We've all been ashamed of our deeds, but hopefully we learn from them. So they were shameful. Don't do them again. And some people are shameless. They just keep doing them over and over. And I can't believe it when I see it. When I see politicians shamelessly just lie directly to the camera when we know they're guilty. Where's the shame gone? And it's not like they're doing it out of desperation. They're doing it because they can. They're not doing it, oh, I'm desperate, I'll do this and I'll never do it again. They're doing it because they're going to do it again. And that kind of person is those guys in the suits. I just get me away from them. And once again, people in suits are wonderful people, not those ones.
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the desperate.
Well, yeah, well, and I know I'm a bad person to a degree. I have my own capacity to commit sin, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, because no one sets out in their life trying to be a bad person or trying to hurt other people.
Let's hope so. Yeah.
But I guess the thing I'm trying to figure out is, like, how do you go about your life, being grateful for exactly what you have and what's given to you, and also, like, actually genuinely be thankful for it. Not like saying you're thankful for it and then being resentful at night, but being by yourself and being at your easel alone and enjoying every second of it, like, I guess being alone and know you're not being watched and have that be totally okay.
Yeah. That is a strength, I think, that you really truly need to be an artist. I think learning how to draw and drawing well are just a part of it. If you can't be alone with yourself doing that, then you can't really be a long-term artist. You can be a short-term artist, or you can be a weekend artist. But the idea of being in a studio for, I'll tell you what, Christian, when I first set out, I thought I missed the boat. Everyone thinks they missed the boat, right? I thought I missed the boat. There was an artist used to come into the studio and come in a Porsche. An artist with a Porsche. Now we used to look out the window like that at him in his Porsche, and he's driving and we went, wow, Graham. He was called Graham Berry. And he rode the advertising wave of the 70s. The advertising wave, I tried to say there. Advertising wave of the 70s, when the peak of what you could earn as an illustrator had come, and then it had gone. But it was still on the downward peak. Even in the 80s, it was still tons of money. But it wasn't the 70s money, where Graham could buy 2 houses and a Porsche. That's how he made a living as an illustrator. Of course, he was brilliant. He had to have that too. But the thing was that we were in a studio together, and there was like 7 of us, and it was very easy to go into that studio every morning. It was so, in fact, I couldn't wait, because I knew it was going to be filled with camaraderie, fun, music, art. We could see each other's art in progress. It was brilliant. So I might have missed the boat on a million things, but I didn't miss the boat of the days of a studio, the studio system. That was brilliant. Now, when I left that, the strength you need, like I am now, to be in an empty room and doing what I did then, I need tenfold strength to walk into this room that I didn't need then. That was an easy walk. That was a hop and a leap into that room. But it's harder to do here. So you got to get your mind right once again. And look what I've got, my lucky cup. I know that if I come into this room, I have to have that. And I'm not allowed in this room until I have that cup and coffee in it. So I know there's a cup of coffee in there waiting for me if I go into that room. That gets me started. So you got to get a couple of little mind tricks going as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah. Well, I think you're totally right about the most important thing about being an artist, at least a professional, successful illustrator, is not that's not the hardest skill of being an artist, doing the art. I think, again, the hardest part about being an artist is being able to focus by yourself for days at a time on a single image, or being able to be alone with your thoughts by yourself and have faith from the beginning to the end that what you're doing is worthwhile and totally going to pay off in some way, and those little mind tricks that you just mentioned, I think are essential to being able to actually follow through with being able to make beautiful pictures.
I think one of the hardest things as a young illustrator starting out is that you're expecting a bad artwork, and if you're expecting a good artwork and it goes bad, then you're disappointed. So there's two sadnesses there. There's the sadness of I'll never be good, or I'm going to be brilliant, and then it's a disappointment at the end. And you got to just clear the clutter from your mind there and go and just say to yourself, what I do with my life drawing classes. I said, let's get our clangers on, and we all do bad drawings, and that'll lead to the good drawings. So we got to know that we got to know that we can't be a brilliant artist straight off the bat, and just enjoy the process. Enjoying the process for me is the most important thing. If you're not enjoying the process, you're not going forward. And if you're just banging out the process, which is what advertising was, you're actually flatlining. I never improved. I think I improved my production skills and, my grit and strength, inner strength. I improved all those things, but I didn't improve my art in the days of advertising at all. I flatlined. And I always talk about Steve, don't I? Steve Houston. And I was talking to Steve Houston, and we both agreed that we didn't get any better. In fact, we started to lose our skills.
Yeah.
Like that. And once that happened, we had to get on, and we did. And the skills came back. They came all the way back again. Because that kind of pressure does not promote skill. It just promotes productivity. So I think everyone should cut themselves a break and just say, here's a couple of I expect a couple of bad drawings here, but I'm going to enjoy those as well. And then a good one comes out, and you go, well, that was unexpected. How wonderful. And your life's always wonderful. It's expectation. Well, it's ego again. Ego.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was listening to Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. He was talking about how pride is the greatest sin. The greatest sin. Like in a Christian religion, pride is the thing that drives people to. Like greed doesn't cause somebody to go invade a country to have as much money to have power over people. That's pride, because you want to have power over people.
Yeah.
And I think that pride, when you're, in the case of a figure drawing, figure drawing session, if you're going into a figure drawing session where it's a great, beautiful day, you're just sitting there and drawing, and you're disappointed and sad because you didn't do a drawing that you're going to get a compliment on. I think that's pride, and that's actually the thing that erodes somebody's confidence over time.
You're absolutely
and somebody's love for the craft.
You're spot on there, Christian. You're absolutely spot on. Is that C.S. Lewis, did you say?
Yes, C.S. Lewis.
Alice in Wonderland, that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think if we could all just go back to cave person days and just enjoy making the art, just enjoy it. And there'd be a joy in the failures as well. Let's not call them failures. I never do. I just go, okay, there's another learning process there. That arm was a bit messy there. I'll have to study arms a little bit more and get a better arm next time. But just enjoying it, just enjoying that process, and not being precious with it. Going back to that artwork that collected mold, I remember at the end of a life drawing session I'd done over a weekend course, and I'm always dropping water. I have a little bottle of water by my side, and I dropped it because there's a camera over my shoulder the whole time, and so I'm very robotic in my movements, and I kicked this water. And it went all over the drawings, because I throw in the drawings over my shoulder like that, throwing the drawings on the floor like that, so people can at break time smooth them out and photograph them to take home, because they're how to draw. And I spilled water all over them. And I thought, oh God, let's just crunch them all up like that and use the actual drawings as a mop and put them all in a bin. So that was all my drawings that I'd done that day. For, the next day was another day. It was a weekend workshop. That was the Saturday workshop. And I went down and made a cup of tea. And I came back in, and bless her heart, the woman that runs the studio, she'd taken them all out of the bin, and she was smooth, and all the other artists were doing it too. All the students were all smoothing the drawings back out again and drying them in the sun. Yeah. He says, "Can we have these?" I said, "Sure." I don't know what you would want them for. So they saw them as more precious than I did. Yeah. And I think that if you can just kill that preciousness, and then every once in a while a good drawing will come on, you go, "Oh yeah, I like that one. I think I'll keep that. That's a keeper." and that's it. And you can't lose with that. You're always happy.
Yeah.
You don't have to pursue happiness. It's there, right there, in front of you.
Well, I mean, I think I'm getting to a point where I don't know if ego is actually entirely bad, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think that ego is something that's built into everybody. I've seen across the board. You can't escape being disappointed in yourself. You can't escape that version of yourself that can be the guy in the boardroom that's trying to take other people down, you know?
Yeah.
I think everyone has that piece inside of them. And I would say that like that little piece of ego or pride or something actually drives people. Like that's what makes you like a human capable of doing great things, you know,
Yeah.
the capacity to look at yourself and be like, I'm not good enough. I need to do better.
Yeah. I wonder if we could put another word on it. Maybe it's drive to survive or something, because, I often have this strange thought. And I wonder if you have it, Christian. I wonder if anyone has it and they don't speak about it, but nobody seems to speak about it. And I think about iterations of me, pre-versions of me. Like when I was 20, I was still me, right? But I'm not the same me now. And if I was, I haven't learned anything. So we change, But I'm still me. I'm still the person that loved the things I still love. Like I was watching James Bond last night, Dr. No, right? Came on television, my heart filled with love for it. I remembered that when I was 20. And I go, oh, what a wonderful film. So I haven't looked at that film and went, oh, it's all hokey. Look, the special effects are awful. I still love it the way I did then, regardless.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So I'm still the same me. I still have the same loves, the same wants, generally anyway. But back then, I was really driven. I was driven 24/7. I barely slept. I'd work in the studio, I'd sleep in the studio. What's the point in going home? I'll only be traveling and then sleeping for 2 hours and driving back again, on an underground. I didn't have a car, so I had to get all these terminals and come all the way back up. I went right from one end of the poor end of the city to the other end of the city. It was a massive amount of time. So I used to sleep there. And so me today thanks me then for that drive, we could call it ego. But if it wasn't for me, the previous iterations of me, I wouldn't be so comfortable now.
Yeah.
And if we had taken me and sent me back to 20, the version I am now at the age of 20, I'd probably be a bum. Because I'm not that driven. I'm not that driven anymore. So yes, you're right. There's something. I wish the ego wasn't the word. If there's something inside of us, especially in guys, that's the problem. It's in guys. That's why they have so much depression. They're pushing themselves so hard to prove. Because is it ego in men more than women? I think it's inbred from generations that the man's the provider, and so we have that burden on our shoulders. But I've met women that are incredibly driven as well.
Yeah.
So it's an odd little world that we have to go through, and I thank all versions of me. But I wouldn't like to be the me of me in my 20s. I wouldn't like to be the.
Yeah. Well, it's I think as a society, as a culture, we admire people who make those great sacrifices. You hear about Elon Musk or whoever else spending 100 hours a week working. That being like he's doing everything in his power possible, giving up everything in order to get ahead, in order to do everything that he can. And I look at that, and there's no part of me that would ever want to actually do that. I admire it, but then there's a part of me that's like, that is such a tragic waste of human life. Such a tragic like waste of not necessarily enjoyment, but just like meaning. And it's totally up to those people to decide what they actually want to do with their lives themselves. But
but that was me. I would say I worked 100 hours a week then. I would say, because I used to work 16-hour days, and sometimes I'd work 3 days in a row. And in fact, I think the longest I ever worked was probably 3.5 days in a row. No sleep, just straight through 3.5 days without sleep, working on a big project for the Bank of Scotland. Now today that was seven oil paintings, and so they had to be delivered wet. 7 oil paintings I did in 3.5 days without sleep, and by the end of that, I was ready to go again. That was the strangest thing about it. I was ready to go again. Now what can I do that today? What, are you kidding me? Imagine the energy and the power cell I had then to be able, because there was times when I was lagging, and then when it was done, I got this new rush. I went, it's done.
Yeah.
You know, because I had to sit in the studio, and it was that studio system. I had to wait in the studio for the agent to come back from the Bank of Scotland. There was 2 points. Here's the strength of will back then. There was 2 points to it. The first point, it wasn't going to be 3.5 days. It was going to be 3 illustrations, 3 paintings. And she came back, and I waited. So that was like a day and a half. And I was waiting for her, 2 days it was. I was waiting for her to come back with the okay, because they usually come back for touch-ups. And she came back and she says, they love it. I says, adios amigos. You know, I'm off to have a sleep to my friends. And she says they want another set. Yeah. I says, when? She said, now. She was a tyrant, I tell you. I couldn't say no to her. So I just had to get my big boy pants back on, sit in that desk, and re-gig my whole... I had to re-evaluate what I was about to do, which was sleep, and say, no, you're going to go for another 2 days now. And I did it. But boy, today, that was murder. That was murder. I slept... I think I slept for probably a whole day. I remember going to sleep and it was dark, and I woke up and it was dark, and I went, have I just woke up 5 minutes later? I went right the full cycle. Yeah. Waste of time, you know, really, because I wasted a day sleeping. Yeah. But
well, yeah, I guess. We talk about those like moments in our lives when we're so driven that we're willing to work for a week straight, you know. Yeah. And I think that, like, as people get older, they look back at that with nostalgia, but also like, I'm so glad I'm not that person anymore. You know, I couldn't be that person ever again. Yeah. You know, and I guess part of my thinking with all this stuff is that people can achieve that. They can achieve the reputation and the skills without necessarily, I don't want to say working that hard, but sacrificing that much, you know? Yeah. Like you hear stories of, you know, Norman Rockwell, who great illustrator, but not necessarily the best father. Yeah. You know, like I love his work, you know, but
yeah, me too.
In terms of, yeah, in his lifestyle, it's like, I wouldn't want that for myself, you know, but then you hear about, you know, N.C. Wyeth or any of those great illustrators, like among that list, you know, had a family, you know, able to at least have a life outside of his work, you know.
Yeah. N.C. Wyeth, here's the oddest fact about him that I remember. N.C. Wyeth had a son that was also his... What was he? I'm trying to work it out. Basically had an affair with his son's wife. Oh, and his wife got pregnant to him. So yeah. N.C. Wyeth got his son's wife pregnant. So I can't work out what that was. Is it his grandson and his son? Yes, it's his grandson and his
son. I didn't know about that one. Yeah, I have to rethink my philosophy on N.C. Wyeth.
Yeah, we're talking about bad fathers.
Yeah.
Take the crown off, Norman.
Yeah.
Hand it to NC.
Yeah. But I don't know, man. I think it's like a like the act of doing artwork is a really profoundly beautiful thing. You know,
it is.
It's so awesome. It's so amazing. And again, when I think about it, it's so simple what you need to do in order to actually find meaning out of it and find success out of it, that it's almost silly, you know? Yeah. Like, you share ideas that you truly believe in to the degree, like you illustrate ideas that you truly believe in, you know? Yeah. They like, you try to take people along for a ride, you know? Yeah. And I don't know, I'm sure you've seen this too, but you know, you see students who are great draftsmen, you know, they've been studying for 10 years, but there's something about them that they're unable to get past the student level, you know. Yeah. They're unable to move on to the next level. They're better than people that are drawing that are, you know, 50, 60 years old, and they're, you know, early 20s or 30s, but they're unable to like create artwork, you know. I don't know if create artwork is the right thing, but unable to move on beyond just studying, you know.
Yeah, I think that it is because you're just about to take another leap into another world, and it's the unknown that terrifies everyone, isn't it? I mean, it's a very comfortable atmosphere. Like, I teach on campus, right? When I walk on campus, I can see why they wouldn't leave it. It's just too wonderful. It's too wonderful. It's not like, like America's gone through terrible times at the minute. It's not like that. It's a freedom that is beyond freedom. I often think, if I was a bum, I could live on this campus. And no one would even notice, because all the doors are open. You walk in, there's showers, there's fridges, there's water, there's internet connection. Everything is basically free, and nobody's getting checked. They're not checking the doors because there's no fear of anyone. An open platform for students to walk in and out of every room and be students. And I often think that. I often think, wow, imagine if you were a bum. It would just be brilliant to live here. All you need to do is go down to that local supermarket every once in a while, and they throw things out the back. You just take that stuff and go and heat it in the microwave at the university. Because half the kids look like bums anyway. You wouldn't notice, you could just stroll around. So yeah, that's a hard place to leave, because once you get out of there, nothing's free. Everything is, you've been using utilities that you're going to have to pay for: water, gas, everything. A hot shower now is going to cost you. So yeah, I can see why they don't. And like, take that picture behind you there, Christian. I just noticed it there. The Frederick. That's Frederick, isn't it? I'm trying to remember his first name. What was his first name?
I can never remember his first name, but this is one of my favorite images.
Yeah, it's from the Hudson River School of Painters.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny you should say that, Christian, because I also have a friend and that's his favorite painting of all time.
Yeah.
And he's not an artist. He's not an artist. And I think, and it's one of my favorites too, and what it is, Christian, that both of us and him have a great strength that you need to be alone. And I think that it's that he's facing the unknown. He's facing another place that he wants to go and see. So he's an adventurer. And so he's very much able to love himself for himself. So he can be alone for a long time. And I've always been happy with my own company. I've always been almost relieved to have no one around and go, finally, it's just me. I don't have to talk. I don't have to think about what I'm going to say. I don't have to worry about, is everyone okay? I don't have to worry about anything. It's just me. Yeah. And so I do what you do. When I go to America, I love America. I love America, no matter what I just said there about, the situation where it's unsafe in schools. I love America. I never feel unsafe in America at all. And I drive around, and I just love it. I drive all the way up to Canada alone. And some people might go, well, if there's no one there to witness your life, that's quite depressing. And I don't see it that way when I'm there. I'm totally all involved in the atmosphere and the environment, because nothing else is distracting me. Every raindrop, even waking up in I like to stay in old motels, by the way. I don't care for the hotels. I like the motels because there's just such
they're raw, right?
The rawness of them is amazing. And I like to just get up in the morning and look out, and I see a real world out there. I open up the blinds, and there is a big log truck. A big logger has just come in and exhausted, and and I walk out in that misty rain. I love it, because I haven't seen that for years. I'm in Australia now. It's 24/7 sun practically, which strangely can start getting a bit depressing,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, you talk about the school that is like this beautiful environment that you think that on paper that's like the perfect place to be. Everything's paid for. It's a beautiful campus. Yeah. You're surrounded by like-minded people, and you're surrounded by, I guess, comfort.
It's comfort.
And even that place, it's like, it's almost better to go off on an adventure where you're going to have to suffer a little bit. You're going to have to go, pay for your own stuff. You're going to have to go and see the world for what it actually is, instead of through a protective lens.
Yeah.
Like I think that's, to me, what makes a true artist is their like capacity to go interact with the world as it is, versus through the safety of, I don't know, it's like somebody else's lens for what they think the world should be, instead of what it could be if you were to go out.
Yeah, that's right. When you see it through your own lens, I mean, people are putting up on Instagram, Instagram versus reality is what I'm seeing now. Yeah. And so they show you perfect Paris, and then they turn the camera on, and it's just, refuge trucks and stuff, and people, sweeping the streets, all that stuff, right? So obviously that's through a very particular narrow lens. And I remember it when I went to Egypt, I couldn't wait to see the pyramids. Every photograph I ever saw of the pyramids, it looked to be in the wilderness. And so I thought, when we get to the pyramids, we're going to have to hire a camel and ride out there or something, Not at all. If you turn your back to the pyramids, Pizza Hut,
right? Yeah, yeah.
Kentucky Fried Chicken. Have you been there,
Yeah.
Christian?
I know. I've seen there are memes online.
Oh, they're starting to do it? No, that's the thing
Yeah.
about online. When I first saw that, there was no
Yeah.
evidence of that at all. So when I came back and I told people that, they were in awe. They went, "You are kidding! I don't believe you." I said, "I swear to you, that has always been viewed from one side." And at night time they have a big light show on the pyramids, right?
Yeah.
And we had to leave or something, so we didn't pay for it, and we didn't go to it because we had to leave. And we went to the Pizza Hut because we were hungry, Went to the Pizza Hut and there's nothing else there, So we had the pizza. It happened to be above the wall where you pay into the pyramids.
Yeah.
And everyone's seated at the pyramids, right? You go up to the second story on the Pizza Hut, and you can see over the wall, and you can see where everyone's sitting. And they opened the windows like a Louvre, like this, and it swung open until it was just a big landscape opening.
Yeah.
And you sat there with your pizza and watched with the best seat in the house from Pizza Hut, watched the show about the pyramids. So you can see why the Pizza Hut was so popular, because all the tourists were in there. I thought, why is this so packed at this time of night? They must have a guidebook or something. Watch the pyramids from the Pizza Hut. But what a disappointment. What an absolute disappointment that was. So I kept my back to it all the time. And of course it's a big city. Not a city like with glass towers. A city from old times, a city of sandstone buildings forever, just endless. And the funny thing also, that wall, is I had made friends with these two kids that had inherited a camel business from their father. Maybe he's dead, I don't know. But they were running it themselves. They seemed awful young to be running it. And I says, I'll come back later, and I did. I kept my word. I got on their camels, and they still had that youthful energy where there was no rules. And they thought it was because they knew I was kind of humorous. They thought it was funny for me, because you usually have to get on the back of the camel to make sure there's no injuries. And he got off the camel and whipped its ass. And it went flying off into the desert with me on it, right?
Yeah.
And I had already seen how he made the camel go faster. He would go, yai, yai, yai. And so, to get the joke back on him, when it started to slow down, I went, ai, 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 and it went flying over, and I could see him behind me, running over the dunes to try and catch up, because he thought I'd stole his camel.
Yeah.
But I reared that camel all the way around, and I could see that the wall ended too. The wall ended like that. So you could just walk around and into the show. Everything's like a facade. Everything is like a trick to tourists.
Right.
Yeah, imagine if you didn't... Imagine if I didn't... imagine if I was in a cocoon and I had to get on like a bus that takes you there, takes you through that gate, into that, and then takes you out the gate and in the bus again. Right? I would never have had that experience of riding the journey. And then there was a point when I was way into the desert, and there was no city noise or anything, and then I just saw the pyramids. That's all I could see, and that was a brilliant experience. I did see a couple of dead camels.
Yeah.
That was weird. So, people just let their camels die there. It's just like skeletons of camels everywhere.
Right.
And I would never have seen that. That's amazing. You might go, well, who wants to see that? But there's life there that exists. That
Harsh reality,
There's the harsh reality that people don't see in Egypt, and it's just the world, And I saw the world as it really is. And I also saw, I wonder if you do this, Christian, I do this all the time. I took that moment where I could see no sign of modern civilization, and I soaked it in. Yeah. Because for me, I could have been 2,000 years back in the past, because nothing was different. Maybe the dunes had shifted, but it didn't matter. Nothing was different. And I try to do that anywhere I am. I try to cut out civilization and find a panorama where I could be back in time. And it's just me and the elements, like that Frederick painting right there.
Yeah, right.
I do that. Do you ever do that?
Absolutely. Well, I guess part of the, I've been living in this vans for almost 2 years now. And when I think about all this stuff, I try to think about what's the purpose of everything, why, when you know that you can be comfortable, when you know that you can go and experience free food, free, the university we're talking about, but instead you go out and experience tragedy, you go and you see death, you see
Yeah.
the real world, you see poverty. It's like, why would you choose to see that stuff over the comfortable, you know, uh, I guess I'll call it cocoon,
Yeah.
like the womb, like
It is,
the
yeah.
mother's house or something, and like every time I've gone and experienced something, I feel like I've become a profoundly more adapted person to modern life.
Yeah.
It's like I was in Peru a couple months ago, and like one, I was in Iquitos, so I was seeing, like they have a city there, but it is like a shanty city, so you
Yeah.
see people that are truly in poverty,
Oh boy, I've seen
and,
it too.
and
Yeah.
well, and I met this guy who was our guide in Peru, who had taken us around the Amazon jungle and stuff. And he sent me a message a couple weeks ago or a couple days ago, saying his brother had died that day in an accident, and he sent me photos, and I was like, existentially freaked out, because I'm in this really comfortable position in the United States. And here's this guy who I knew from Peru who is experienced, this, completely preventable death, in his family. And
You say it was a preventable. Did you say preventable death?
yeah.
Yeah. In
I
what way? How is it preventable?
I think there was an accident and he didn't get the medical help he needed because he was too poor.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and it's like, well, and it's like you see stuff like that, and you're like, how can it's like the contrast of your life versus a life like that. You see stuff like that all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm sure even in the city that you live in now, you walk past homeless people,
Yeah.
and you see people that are truly,
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Christian. Here's the thing. We have universal health care here. And I rarely see homeless people, very rarely, and we don't have to worry about that preventable death at all.
Yeah.
Not, I mean, I'll give you it for instance. I was mowing the lawn once. Kind of funny story as well, because my wife was saying we got to mow that lawn because Matthew's coming. I says, oh, Prince Matthew, he can walk through the grass. He won't trip over it, because I had a painting to do. And she kept saying, but he's, it's Matthew, because Matthew's very wealthy, and, it's that thing we're talking about. Matthew's got a big house, Matthew, Matthew, right? So I love Matthew, by the way. So I said, okay, I'll cut the grass. So I'll go down with a lawnmower, right? And I'm cutting the grass. And the little fuel pump popped out. And the fuel starts to come out the pump because it caught on a leaf or something. Because I'm too fast, I'm not attending to things. And I thought, oh, what's happening? It's starting to boop, 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 boop. I thought, oh, it's that, right? Now, in order to start that mower, it's an old mower, in order to start that mower, I have to stop it because I have to attend to that pump. And if I have the mower running, I have to turn it up on its side, and those blades are spinning. I can't be near them. But having to stop the mower, the hardest thing about that mower is starting the bloody thing. So I had to boom, 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 boom. And I thought, and here, kiddies, is a tale of caution. I turned it on its side with the blades turning and just was very carefully putting that pump end back on again. And it wouldn't fit on, right? And I went, oh, with this hand.
Yeah.
3 fingers straight into the blades, right?
Yeah.
And I went, instead of going, I've lost 3 fingers, I went, oh, God, that artwork's never going to get finished. That was the first thing that came through my head.
Yeah.
That artwork's never going to get finished. And then I looked at my fingers and I thought, have I lost 3 fingers here? Because it was just a mess. Yeah. And I went into the bathroom and I poured water over it. And the top end, this one, the top end of that finger had been cut off and flipped back. It was a flipped. Hope nobody's squeamish on there. The others were just terribly mangled and bruised with cuts and stuff on them. That was the only injury, and I went, oh, that's fine. I flipped the top back on and wrapped tissue paper and masking tape on it and went back to work, right? And my wife came in and she says, what the bloody? There was blood everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was not even thinking about it. Off to the hospital. I thought, oh, right, off to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, right? Went in, was seen by 4 doctors. 5 nurses, I think. Every room was an empty room. And I walked into each one of those rooms, and it was like a private service. And I walked off into the sunset with that finger fixed. No cost. And I went, Jesus, Australia's a wonderful place. And went back to work again. Now that allows us a level of freedom from fear. And when you're in a country that you don't fear getting sick, I think that really helps a lot for your mental,
Absolutely.
self, your mental self. Of course, we pay for it. It's like 4% on our taxes. I have no problem paying 4% on my taxes at all. If anyone says to you, for instance, there's 4% off that coat, you go,
Right.
who cares? I'm not going to buy the coat because it's 4% off. So it's nothing at all. It's nothing at all. So I hope you get that, Christian. I really hope you get the universal health care. I hope that comes to you. If you just want it. I don't know if you want it.
Yeah, I want it. Again, I mean, money is that important to me. It's like if I guess it's the world is such a strange place. Like going to an extreme place like South America or Peru, like you have incredibly wealthy people there, and then you have the truly poor.
Yeah.
And in Iquitos, there's in Iquitos, there's this like one street, Main Street, one part of the city that's very wealthy and has all of the bars and all the nice restaurants, all the nice cars, the Audis, and then everywhere else, 90% of the city is scrambling for money, poor and dirty, and
Yeah.
and it's like when I look at that place, it's like I see that same impulse of people justifying doing certain things because they're so desperate for money. It's like you see taxi drivers, that taxi drivers that are, will yell at people for keeping them, for inconveniencing them a little bit, because they're so desperate for money,
Yeah.
And I guess it's like I don't think that's their fault at all. I think it's like a collective error from the whole society of maybe a few people taking way more than their fair share, causing the rest of the people to have to scrimp and save and fight for every dollar that they earn.
It's always that, Christian. I mean, I pay incredibly high tax. I really do.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me at all. It does not bother me one bit, because I feel that if I can go down to the beach tomorrow and there's no poor people, not because I don't want to see poor people, I just don't want people to be poor. And if there's no poor people around, I feel that my taxes in some way contributed to that. And so I'm a happier person. I mean, it's the same with those big houses. There's always that angst inside. I don't have any angst, because it's not. Usually in most cities, they sweep the poor to one side. Now, I'm not saying that Brisbane is a perfect place. There definitely is that. And even worse, it's the Aboriginal people that lived here before everyone else. Yeah. Every time I meet an Aboriginal person, I always apologize to them. I say, I'm sorry for what happened here. I really am. And so they're over on one side of the river, the poor side of the river. And so, and in Barcelona, you just step off one street and all of a sudden, what just happened here? Los Angeles, what just happened here? There's always this disparity of wealth. But in certain places, it's so extreme and so sudden, isn't it? You turn a corner. And I mean, and sometimes it's mixed, isn't it? I remember walking down in Los Angeles I wanted to walk around the Hollywood Hills just to see where the movie stars lived. And I was surprised nobody else was walking around. I thought it would have been hundreds of people. It really was like that Instagram reality. No one walks around the Hollywood, not the Hollywood Hills, sorry, the Beverly Hills. No one walks around Beverly Hills. I thought, where is everyone? You'd think there'd be tourists everywhere. A tourist bus will come around every once in a while. But nothing. I'm on my bike, hired a bike. Right. Maybe it's because if you're walking around, the cops will pick you up and throw you in the jail. I don't know. Nobody bothered me at all. But I remember walking there, and there was a guy getting out of a car, and I don't know what it's called. I think it's a Spider, maybe it's called. Those cars, it's not a DeLorean, but the doors wing up, and it was a big yellow thing. It looked like a toy car growing up. It was just so spotless. And a guy steps out of that, and he's walking into this big fancy restaurant. And beside the big fancy restaurant, there's a guy on at the bottom of the heap. You know, he had a tin, I think, maybe I imagined that, but he was definitely begging. And whatever you say in America, I'm not sure if it was spare some change. That's the echo I have from London. It was every corner, spare some change. He asked him for money, and the guy just totally, absolutely ignored him, or said something like "get a job" or something. But the vibe was, "You deserve where you are. I deserve where I am." And I just was appalled. I just could not believe that, strip the cars and the clothes away. This is two human beings. This is two men that have feet and hands and heads, and one is not acknowledging the other at all. It was horrific. And that kind of stuff to me is where have we? How did we get there? How did we get there? And it
Well,
comes back to that greed again. Maybe I don't know.
it's strange. I mean, so I lived in New York City for about 7 months. I lived on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And, I
Yeah, no.
yeah, and I was there were homeless people right outside the apartment I was staying at. And the first few times they were there for the entire 7 months I was there.
Yeah,
First few times I gave them money, gave them $10, $15 every time. But
that's a
then
lot of money.
eventually,
But you don't see that kind of money swapping from one person to the other. In fact, you know what, Christian? You usually see that kind of money from people that don't have much money. That's what I've seen. Isn't that strange? Yeah, go on.
well,
Sorry. I wanted you to
but
acknowledge your generosity there.
oh, thank you. But I guess I had given them money, and then um, after a while, I became kind of frustrated with them. They were in that same spot every day, asking me for money. They weren't doing anything. And eventually I just started ignoring them because I felt like there was nothing, like I can't keep giving that amount of money every time I see them.
That's right.
You know, and I'm not ashamed of saying this necessarily, and I'm not proud of it, but I started to ignore them,
Yeah.
and I felt like I had no other decision because the more that attention that I gave them, the less, I didn't feel like I didn't feel like anything was actually happening. I didn't feel like my generosity was being utilized in a way that improved their life.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. It's like if I gave money to somebody every time they had asked while I was living in New York, I would have given away thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree. I don't think it helps. I don't think it helps.
Yeah, yeah,
And because what happens is you go to a city and the city owns you for a while, doesn't it? You go there, you're frightened, not frightened. Not, here, let's acknowledge one thing. We're two guys, right? Our world is totally different than if I was a woman, my world would be different, totally
yeah,
different. I was a fearless 22-year-old when I went to London, totally fearless. I mean, for myself, totally fearless for me. I had no fear that anything would happen to me because I came from something so bad and there's the thing about if you come from extreme hard environment, everything seems pretty easy. So when I went to London, sure, it was hard, it was tough, but it didn't seem tough to me because I'd come from something much tougher. And so I never feared anything, but I wasn't a woman. I didn't have to fear like a woman would have to fear. And so we have incredible freedom, we have that. But for a while, it's not fear. What it was, the unknown is, eking at me. And I got to watch this and I got to watch that. Is this guy, I mean, it doesn't mean I'm totally fearless. I remember a shadow of a person behind me in Brixton, London, one of the most dangerous places in London at the time. It's where I lived. I remember a long shadow cast by a street lamp. And it was a guy wielding a hammer.
yeah,
And he was coming at me. And I turned around and had to wrestle with him
yeah,
because the shadow gave him away. That was the kind of environment. But even then, I just went, oh, there's a guy trying to. My thought was, there's a guy coming at me with a hammer. I better deal with this. It wasn't, I'm dead. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
right.
That would be,
Yeah,
if I was a person that wasn't a 22-year-old tough kid,
yeah,
I would have went, oh, it's all over. I could have done. I could have went, it's all over. Instead, I'm ready to kick his ass as he went
yeah,
past. So two different things. So the city owned you for a while, and then sadly you own the city in some ways because I remember that very same thing. And you're not a bad person, Christian, because I remember doing exactly what you did, and then after a while going, "Can you guys just leave me alone? Go and bother somebody else." That's what it comes to
yeah,
all the time. It comes to for all of us. And I remember sitting and I reproach myself. I remember sitting having a lunch outside because I like being outside, and someone come up and ask me for money. I says, look, I'm having some lunch here.
Yeah.
You know, ask me when I'm not having lunch. And I felt, you know, when the dust is cleared and you look at yourself, and I went, you horrible person.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's what I had become. I had become that in that moment. So we all, like I said at the very start, we've all done shameful things.
Yeah.
But I'll never do that again. You know, as long as we learn that we don't do that again, you know.
Yeah.
I felt awful. I felt absolutely terrible.
Right. Well, and I guess it's,
Yeah,
sorry,
go
go
on,
ahead.
Christian.
Well, I guess it's I found it was strange what I was desensitized to when I moved to the city. You know, you'd see people that are, you know, dying on the side of the street. You know, people like even around. I'm at the Proco office right now in the parking lot.
Oh yeah. Oh, before I forget,
Yeah.
how was Proco's birthday? And happy
Oh, it was
birthday.
good. Yeah. I ate too
Proco,
many
I call him
sweets.
Stan.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you call him
I had
Proco? You don't call him Proco, do you? Call him Stan?
I call him Stan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess I'm in the Proco parking lot. So we have an office in San Diego. But
Oh, you're right outside it.
yeah. Here I can.
Yeah, because I remember he did a. Oh, it's still daytime. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember you went in. He was doing a little promo for something, and he went in, and you were using a shower, and you had a toothbrush in your mouth. I remember that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and then I recorded the one with Marshall. I did a podcast with Marshall Vandroth. That was
Saw that one,
the
yeah.
same parking lot.
And Stan come over for a bit, didn't he?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. That's right.
But you know, it's like a just you know, a couple blocks away from here. There's a shopping mall, like a little shopping mall. You know, Starbucks and sandwich shops. And there's this guy, homeless guy, that was there. That he had been there for almost a year, and his leg was, you know, he was clearly diabetic, and this leg needed to be amputated, and he was there every day, and it was getting progressively worse, and he's no longer there anymore. He just, like, you know, he just stopped showing up, you know, and I have no idea what's happening to him now. But
Well, let's hope he got hospital care, but it could be the worst.
Yeah.
It could be the worst scenario, most likely.
Yeah. And well, it's like you know, that's, I guess it's part of the reality, is that, like, you know, that stuff exists around us all the time, 100%, you know, within even 100 feet or 10 feet or so. You know, it's like, you know, there's a quote from Milton's Paradise Lost. It's like, you could create a hell of heaven or a heaven of hell. You know, you could be in the most beautiful place in the world. You know, you could be in, you know, in Hawaii drinking margaritas on the most beautiful beach on the planet and feel like this life isn't worth living. Or you could be in the midst of a mine, you know, mining coal, and, you know, like being in a lot of pain physically, but loving every second of it, you know. And I guess, well, I guess going back to what I was saying is, I've become desensitized to the range of human experience. You know, it's like, I honestly don't know how to feel about it.
It's a tricky one. Well, at least the fact that you are contemplating it means that you're a good person. It's the non-contemplation that's the bother for me. When I'm a person that doesn't seem to have any care, because they keep doing the same thing. They just keep repeating that. They keep repeating that bad behavior. How do they live with themselves? And someone said to me once, you know, just feel pity for them because they have to live with themselves. They have to live with that person. Imagine living with that horrible person, and that's what they do 24/7. But that sounds like a revenge thing too. I'm living that live. Once upon a time, I wasn't. I used to call people out all the time, you know, when I was in my 20s. Because I think what happens is that, you know, like, I was homeless, and I didn't think I was. So there's a different mindset, right? So I was homeless, and I thought, when a woman said to me, so you're, because I went to try and get some housing, and the woman said to me, okay, so you're homeless. I says, I'm not homeless. She says, have you got a home then? I says, well, no, but I'm not home. Because that person you've just described is what I thought a homeless person was. I says, I'm looking for somewhere to live. She says, but you're not living anywhere right now. She was getting irritated, you know. Yeah. I says, yeah, but I'm not homeless. I took it as an insult. Anyway, so I was technically homeless. Yeah. And what that meant is I used to just, you know, I wasn't really, once again, I was on a park bench maybe once or twice. And I stayed in a house that wasn't mine, which was a squat. I don't know if they even have that term in America. But in the UK, it's within the law to squat. which means if you find an empty building, you can legally go into it. You can't break into it, but you can go into it and live there. And that's what, and then you have squatters' rights. Is there anything like that in America?
Yeah, there is.
You have squatters' rights. So I was a squatter. So I didn't assume that I had any problem. And it didn't matter. It wasn't someone's house. It was, council flats. They belonged to the government. And they hadn't made them people worthy yet. I said, look, I'm in a squat at the minute. I says, can't I just have that? Because that's who I was talking to, the government. I need a place to live in. She says, no, that's not fit for human habitation. I says, I'm in it. She says, no, but we couldn't legally let you sign into that place until it had proper amenities. I says, I can fix it up. There was no talking. So bureaucracy really just kills any. They should have had another thing in place for guys like me that was willing to put in a bit of work and not worry about it, Right. But yeah, I was technically homeless and never happier. Never happier than when I was in that squat. I loved it. Didn't own a thing.
Well, I mean, I like living in a van, So from one definition of the law, I'm technically homeless right now. And,
that's right. You're homeless.
I technically I sleep in a new place every night. I sleep on the streets.
I did a podcast with a homeless man.
Right. I'm gonna rob you.
They married.
Well, the American dream is now to live in a van, I think. But, I don't know. Again, I think it always goes back to identity. It's like, is the guy that works 15 hours a day and then commutes 2 hours back to home and to work just to sleep there, is he homeless?
Yeah.
Like he's not in his house ever. It's like, from one definition, it's like if you're not enjoying the thing that you're spending all your money on, is that, do you even have it in the first place?
That's right.
And again, I mean, the thing that I'm really starting to realize is that personal labels and personal visions for yourself make all the world of difference when it comes to your ability to make your life better. It's like, I would meet people in New York, and the naive part of me would, sometimes try to help people, try to like, and not just with money, but like I had met this guy who he might have ripped me off. I don't know. I don't really care. But so he was on crutches, and he said he had broken his legs, and he had just had a baby. So he had broken his legs, so he can't work as a construction worker. And he had a baby, so he asked me to give him some money to buy baby formula. So I gave him some money, and I talked to him for a bit, and I was like, hey dude, if you had it, you have an internet connection, right? So you could go online and tutor people for, $40, $50, $60 an hour. And, he did not see himself as capable of being able to do that, And I'm not saying he is or isn't. I'm just saying he didn't see himself as somebody that was able to do that, And that distinction of seeing himself as somebody who isn't able to do that made him fundamentally just somebody that wasn't able to do it,
That's an amazing thought, because you can disable yourself. You can disable, even if you've got all your limbs working, you can disable yourself from doing anything by saying, I can't do that.
Right.
There's that, your self-disablement. But but once again, when I was growing up in London, there was terrible hardships in London too when I was in my 20s, but it was bulletproof. And there was a politician then called Margaret Thatcher, and she was the epitome of you deserve what you get. And she ran the country. She was horrific. And so her idea was the poor deserve to be poor. And if you want, she had a slogan called "Get on your bike," which meant, help yourself. We're not going to help you. And she was a horrible person. And she just died the other day, and there were celebrations all over England. Now, I don't agree with that. I didn't celebrate. I just went, well, for me, that wasn't a successful life lived, what she lived. But she created, so imagine creating a nation that celebrates your death, So for me, and I think her problem was she never knew hardship herself. She grew up in not great wealth, but her father owned a shop, and she worked in the shop, and then she got married to a millionaire, and that was it. That was so her life was never. She stepped from one door into another door, and never saw the streets in between. So she had no idea of poverty or anything like that. And I think that's what a kind of hard mind is. They don't know what it's like. They really, truly don't understand what it's like to be poor. They just think you deserve it.
Right.
And so when I was poor, I saw what you saw, Christian. I saw it all the time. And going back to New York, I remember two incidences in New York. I remember seeing a woman huddled up on a seat, and it was near winter time. That's usually when I go to New York. And she was huddled up, and my heart, you just can't. How can you walk past?
Yeah.
And I went over and tried to talk to her, and I think there was mental illness, so there had to be.
Yeah.
And she sort of mumbled something. I thought, jeez, that's not so unbelievable, because right in front of her is a shop with hot coffee and sandwiches. So I went in, and rather than give her money, I went in and I bought her hot food and a coffee, and I set it beside her, and she practically looked frightened, and I left her, and that wasn't the first time. This is a common reaction I've had from people when you try to help them. They're frightened of you.
Yeah.
I remember also another incident where you're up and down the scales. Let's say the king of the bums. There was the king of the bums, yeah. And he sat outside a very famous pastrami restaurant that I think is just closed, up in upper east side, upper west side. And I had to go to it. I always go to these famous places because I want to experience them before they disappear. And I went in there and I couldn't believe the size of a sandwich.
Yeah.
It was like that size.
Oh, wait. I on the Lower West Side. I know which one you're talking about, actually.
I think it has a K in it.
Yeah. Cats.
Yes, Cats.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
You've been there, yeah?
Yeah.
Was there a dumb outside?
I lived about 5 minutes from there.
And where was that, Christian? Because my map's gone all crazy now.
Lower East Side.
It was Lower East Side, or was it Lower West? Yeah, Lower East. That's where you were living.
Yeah.
So I went in there, and I came out with half the sandwich because they boxed it for me. But within my mind, because I saw that guy going in, and I thought, I'll give it to that guy. Imagine what that would be like, a big hot pastrami sandwich, and you're sitting out in the cold.
Right.
I gave it to him. He took it like it was nothing. He just went.
Thanks.
And set it by his side. And there was another one there.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Right.
And so I walked away, and I was actually a bit not angry, but I went, not giving him a sandwich again. So there was me, the city owns me, that I own the city kind of thing again. I'm going, I'm not giving him a sandwich again. My ego wanted stroked.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I remember I went to go see Henry Rollins, the former senator. Yeah. I went to go see him talk once, and he told a story where he was in Afghanistan, and he just walked down a random road, and he was like, oh, like, here's a bunch of kids playing soccer. They have a crappy soccer ball. They have shitty clothes. I'm going to go to the nearest, place where I can, like, the sporting goods place in the rich part of the city. And I'm going to go buy a bunch of soccer balls and clothes for these kids. They're going to be so excited. So he went there, got a taxi, brought back, thousands of dollars worth of soccer stuff to give to these kids. And he had, like, thrown it out, and immediately all the kids started fighting. They started fighting over all this stuff. And one of the adults came up to him and was like, what the fuck are you doing? These kids are going to get robbed. They're going to get robbed on their way home. And, it's like he admitted that, like, oh, this was completely just to serve myself. I wanted to feel like the person who was helping this community, and as a result, he had, these kids became targets as a result,
And he might not even have thought that, it was later when he looked at it. I've had loads of incidents like that. Yeah. I found, and here's coming back to art again, I found that the most precious thing when I was traveling is you give a kid a pen. So I used to have pockets full of pens. And nobody's going to rob you for a pen. It's in your pocket. So I used to give children pens, and they loved them. They would take a pen, and imagine the entertainment they're going to have with that pen once they have it. I remember being in Jordan, in Petra. Have you ever experienced it?
No. I'd like to go. Yeah.
You know of it? It's the end of the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It's nothing like it. And I was very lucky, once again, that Instagram versus reality was one of those, where it shows the first big building as you come through the crevasse, and there's just one person strolling around, and then they reverse the camera and there's like hundreds of people, or it's like 4 hours later or something, I don't know. But when I went there, that was my experience. No one at all. It was just amazing. And as I went through all of the caverns and into the next part, I think it was one of the biggest cities in the world at one point. And they had an aqueduct system and everything. They had giant swimming pools and things. Hard to believe in a desert. That's what was hidden underneath what we don't see anymore. And I went through that, and there was a bunch of kids, and some entrepreneur made a little shop, just wood, little shop in the middle of this nothingness, really. And I went into it, and it sold fudge. Yeah. Right. Of course, that's what we're going to sell, fudge. Yeah. So I bought some fudge, And there was all these little kids, and the skinny ones were really strong, right? And they're all grasping, because I'm giving them bits of fudge. And they're all grasping. I thought, just like that guy, Henry Rollins, I went, I'm out of my depth here.
Yeah.
And there was one little kid, and he was just the smallest thing, and he couldn't get through. And I went, hey, this guy here, let's give him some fudge, right? And I went over to him and had the big block of fudge like that, and I was going to break a bit off for him. And he grabbed it, and he put it in his mouth, and he closed his mouth like that. And
Right.
And he was drooling like this. And they were all really going to try and take it out of his mouth. They're all around him. Like, give us that fudge. It's gone, man.
Right.
He had adapted to the situation. There was an entrepreneur. There was the guy.
Right.
Hey, you want this fudge? You have to take it out of my mouth. But I had the same experience. That was, it was too much. There they were. What they really needed was a hearty meal of rice or something, not fudge. That kid's he's gonna be running around in circles for hours with all that sugar.
Right.
But he loved it. Just seen his little face.
Yeah. Well, and again, I guess it's like truly helping somebody is, like, there's a version. I was pretty driven, and I'm 27 now, but I was way more driven in my early 20s. And there's versions of us when we were younger that didn't have the same access to resources. It's like again, those camel driver kids that you were talking about earlier, or instead they're inherited their family's taxi or something. So instead of focusing all that energy towards art to earn a lot of money or whatever, they had to that their entire life was in the mine, or their entire life was in the taxi cab or something, just grinding as much as they possibly could. And so much of all of this stuff is like, especially our own success, I think, is completely out of control, out of our own personal control. Like being exposed to things at very precise times, even having access to a library in our hometown, or being able to go to public school, or any of that kind of stuff is such a profoundly valuable thing that I think so many people take for granted.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, especially now, I'm sure you look at kids now who have all these incredible art resources online, and you're like, oh, if only, if only I had this. Yeah, right.
If only, and they'll do that too. 20 years from now, they'll go, oh, if only. Back in my day, we had to turn a computer on. Now you just go. Well, you can do that now. Can you just turn your computer on? But you know what I mean? They'll have holograms or something. Who knows what? But yeah, they'll go. They'll do the same thing. They'll do the same thing.
Have you been looking at AI art at all?
I have. I saw a bit of it.
Yeah. I think it's not quite there yet, but it's getting to a point where it's really impressive what it can do with just typing in a few words, And it's like maybe in 10 years, it's like the idea of being an illustrator is obsolete because you just type it in and it just pops out.
Well, I have seen that happen. I've seen that happen in lore tech. I have seen like the once upon a time. I think here's what I think. I think if you're always innovative in your art, then you're always going to be okay, because you can ride whatever wave's coming. And I remember there was before the internet for us back in the day was an annual illustration book. It was a big tome like that. It was massive. And all the illustrators in America and the UK, you could get the UK one and the American one, all in this book. And there was a Japanese one. And the Japanese one was astonishing. It was astonishing. But there was no innovation in any of the illustrations at all. So basically let's say you'd open up the American book and there would be Sid Mead, right? And then you would open up the Japanese book and there would be a Sid Mead style, even glossier, taken to the extreme, right? And you go to the entree now, you go, this person is better than Sid Mead. But there was no innovations in it. It was still the same kind of Sid Mead cars and stuff, Sid Mead flying machines. And it was that all the way through the book. It was like there was a process where you learned your skills. It was a cultural thing. You learn your skills to a high degree, but you don't innovate. You don't take it anywhere else. And so these super realists and all of these guys, especially the super realists, they were done in a minute the second Photoshop came out, because no longer were photorealistic skills in demand. Because all you had to do was polish up. The biggest idea was you get nearly everybody's portfolio had a Mars bar in it. Do you have that chocolate bar?
Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Well, and I've had them before, but
Yeah.
yeah,
A Mars bar was incredibly hard to photograph. A Mars bar, cameras
yeah,
would melt it. It had to spray it with poison,
yeah,
and it's still you could see every dot on it because you're using a high res camera. All that stuff. So it was easier for an illustrator to paint it with
yeah,
airbrush, and it would be pristine. And
yeah,
so nearly everybody's portfolio had a Mars bar in it. And so you were highly sought after. I did it for a while. I was photorealist for a while and made a ton of money of it. And then Photoshop, all you have to do is just touch it up, touch the photograph up. Bingo, all those guys out of work. So they had learned their skills to the highest level possible
right.
in render, and all their skills became obsolete. Yet Sid Mead, right till his deathbed, still
Yeah.
innovating all the way through. So we got to watch that. It's not just about technique. It's about, what's in here. What are we
Absolutely.
what are we trying to say?
Absolutely. And I guess, going back to what I was saying in the beginning of the conversation, like I have no interest in talking about technique with people at all.
Mm,
I think that, the thing that like everyone is going to run into is a loss of identity, a crisis of who you are. Everyone's going to experience some fundamental tragedy in their life, whether it's the death of a loved one,
yeah,
getting sick, whatever. And I think that someone's capacity to, one, come up with their own ideas, and two, deal with just how tragic life fundamentally is going to be, the goal isn't success, but is going to be a lot more successful as an artist than somebody that's not equipped with those fundamental skills.
yeah,
Like I've been just thinking about, like, what if tomorrow Midjourney, the AI art software, became good enough to where you could just type in, dragon fighting a knight, and it pops out the best illustration you've ever seen. How many people
yeah,
would experience a massive loss of identity itself?
yeah. It's true.
A huge amount. And I think if somebody can have go through something like that in their life, where they spent all this time getting these skills and then suddenly made obsolete by a robot, but they're still able to find meaning in doing that, creating those images in some way or innovating in some way, they're gonna find something inevitably that's going to give them the success that they're after.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the go on. Sorry, Christian, we finishing the thought.
Yeah. Oh no, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, on that thought, like take an artist like Chuck Close, for instance. He was a photorealist. Now, how could he have made a living when we had photographs? So, but he did. And the difference was they were on canvas and he put them on by hand. So he put every stroke on there by hand and it became valuable art. Even though the equivalent of AI, the camera, could do something even more precise. And yet he could make. So let's have that as a bit of comfort. If people know that a human hand did it, it's valuable. If the AI did it, it's functional. That's two
Yeah,
different things, isn't it? So I think art will always be treasured. I think as long as a
absolutely.
person did it.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this particular interview specifically, where in a perfect world, if I had more money and time, I would ship this van to Australia, and I would be there. I would be there in person with you right now having this conversation.
Yeah.
And I
Even
think,
on the back of a private jet, you mean? Like open the.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, 100%. Like if I could, why not?
That'd
Yeah,
be
yeah.
brilliant.
Well, I was joking around and with Steven, it's like if I could have a helicopter, a
Yeah.
sketchy helicopter podcast where I just you know, like instead of us, being in a van, we'd be, uh, I would fly us to the top of a mountain somewhere in Australia, and we would, have a
Amazing. Wouldn't
conversation.
it be incredible?
Well, and I think, I mean, I think that I'm something would be added to this conversation, or the
Yeah.
presentation of the conversation, at least, if I was there in person. I think they're
Yeah.
like we might have the same exact conversation, but then there's a deeper level to it. If I'm there in person with
Yeah,
you and
that's
I've
right.
gone
Yeah.
on I've gone on this epic adventure. We can't do that obviously because it would cost
Yeah.
an enormous amount of money. But
Yeah.
you know,
This is incredible what we can do here, but you're absolutely right. The in-person
yeah,
stuff is getting lost all the time, isn't it? The in-person.
yeah,
And I said, I think I did okay in my career in the early days, very simply because I was in person a lot. And, let's say you have a Zoom interview. That's better than an email interview. You know, if you email people, that's just like cold calling. Nobody's going to answer them. If you have a Zoom call, maybe you've got, you know, the beginning of a career there with a company. But walking in a door and shaking someone's hand, they want to help you right away.
Absolutely.
You've made that human connection. They want to help you, you know. And having this flat 2D image, maybe people don't really, once they shut it off, you're gone again. You know, that person still has to leave you out the door. You know, you're still walking out the door with them. You're still talking about the weather, and off you go. And that's a human connection. So that's kind of lost. That's kind of lost. But you know, this is amazing. You know, this is incredible. So I think every generation has a loss and a gain. But I was thinking about if you took me to the top of that mountain, you know, let's say what you start to get your dream. You get your dream. You've got your $1 billion, and you're on the top of the mountain. I bet you were in the top of that mountain. And one of us goes, cold up here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's super chill. It's windy. The wind is messing up the audio. Yeah, right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a friend took me in his sports car once, and I thought, because here's the great thing about being an artist, you can come from dirt poor poverty, and then move in any circle. There was even an ad for that back in when they were hunting out communists. They said, beware of artists, they move in all circles. Right? Yeah, right. So I remember being in a sports car. I'd never been in a, well, actually I had, but not an open top one. Because Graham Berry, the guy I talked about back in that studio, I was in his Porsche. Yeah. And he used to come into the studio. And he says, I'm going down to the post office. I says, okay, I'll come with you, Graham. We usually walked, but it was a bit of a cold day. And he says, we'll take the Porsche. I went, really? You know, I don't know when it's ever, I've only ever seen Graham get in and out of the Porsche. Yeah. Got in the Porsche with him, went down to the post office, got out of the Porsche. Whole different world. I've been to that post office many times, right? Totally invisible. See, the minute I get out of that Porsche, everyone turned around. Everyone was talking about the Porsche and the people that get out of it. We're in the queue for the post office. People behind are saying Porsche. That's all we could hear, right? So it changes you as a person. I was uncomfortable. I don't want to be the person in the Porsche. You know, I was unhappy with that idea. Now I no longer have the freedom I had where I could walk around anonymously, which I really value. Yeah. And I got in another car, and it had an open top, and I was really looking forward to it. I says, oh, I can't wait. This guy's an advertising. So we were in, he took the top down. By the end of it, I never wanted to go in a sports car with an open top again the rest of my life. Yeah. All I could smell was petrol fumes. All I got in my eye was insects and...
Very loud.
And noise, and it was horrible. And I would get up and I was sick. I was nearly going to throw up. I says, can we pull that down? But by the time he pulled it down, it still had all this stuff in it. It was horrible. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And then there was a noise all the time. It wasn't a silent car. See, what is it, that old one? Be careful what you want, or something like that?
Yeah.
That.
Be careful. Yeah. Be careful what you wish for. You know?
Be careful what you wish for.
I mean, I talk about this all the time, where I think that if I had that, you know, I ask everybody, would you be doing the same thing, same thing exactly that you're doing right now if you had $1 billion?
Yeah.
If I had $1 billion, maybe the validity of what I'm trying to say is actually lost. You know, it's like I lived very uncomfortably last year. You know, I pee in a bottle right now. I don't have a bathroom. You know, I brush my teeth in public bathrooms. Yeah. You know,
and we've all done it. Hopefully we've all been able to do that. I have.
Well, and it's like, you know, maybe having $1 billion would close off certain parts of the world to me. You know, it's like, instead of going and experiencing what it's like to sleep in Walmart parking lots, or to go and, like, you know, be just super uncomfortable physically, maybe that closes me off to go and meeting certain people or having certain experiences that make that's actually the entire point of having those experiences in the first place, you know? Yeah. And when I think about it, it's like the only reason I'd want $1 billion is just purely for security. You know, it's like, I like to think that I'm trying to do as much as I can, like what I would be doing if I didn't have to worry about money, you know?
Yeah.
And I guess it's like, when I look at people and I look at people's potential specifically, I think that everyone has the capacity to do their own version of their own great thing. You know, like their own magnum opus. My magnum opus is different from your great thing, and, you know, vice versa. But everyone can like take a step towards living the life that is that holds maximum meaning and maximum purpose. You know, like the purpose that everyone is searching for, you know, that like, I'm happy, you know, everyone can take strides towards that today. And
Yeah.
I guess part of the money thing is I think that a lot of people wait for, you know, I'm not going to be happy until I have this money or this job or this, you know,
Yeah.
instead of I'm happy right now, you know.
Yeah. Be happy right now. I'll tell you when I've experienced some of the most extreme happinesses, and it was after a near-death experience. And I'm sure you've probably been close to it. Nearly everyone's had an experience where you go, boy, I nearly got killed there. But I could really claim to say I was nearly killed there. Because I've only got one, here's that validation thing as well. I have only one friend left alive from this incident that can validate this story because he was there too. And so when he dies, it's my story. That's all that's left of it. And what it was where I grew up. It was called the Troubles, a euphemism for, war. So it was a slow burn war. You know, when we did the Ukraine thing, I was saying how I identify with it so closely. That's all happened at once like that. We had a 30-year slow burn war where it was actually quite terrifying because you never knew when it was your turn. So it wasn't battles in the street every night. It was once in a while, you know? And in some parts of Ireland, you wouldn't even know it was happening. But if you were in Belfast, where I was, it was 24/7. If you were in Derry, the other part of Northern Ireland, that it was just extreme battles going on there all the time. And I was in Belfast. And then you can micro sink into that again and go, areas within Belfast were really hard hit. And if you've seen the movie Belfast with Kenneth Branagh, that Kenneth Branagh did there recently,
Yeah.
I looked up his postcode for where that was. It was just down the road. So he knew, he grew up exactly, and that really resonated because it looked just like how I remembered it, although it was all fancied up and the streets were very clean. So you had inside that the Ardoyne, and that's where I grew up, and that was 24/7. You're on the height of your nerves if you let it get to you. But here's the strange thing. After a while, you get comfortable with that and you don't even think about it. So like you might go up the street and a bunch of rioters will run past you. Like a whole people running past in riot. And chasing them is an armored Saracen with soldiers and guns. And you'll just walk past it and you'll carry on up to the shop. That's what happens. And, you know, it doesn't take a second for the soldiers to go, oh, he's just going to the shop. That becomes normalcy, right? He's not one of the rioters. So that's what I lived in. But it didn't mean I wasn't in danger. So at the top of our street was two roads, just like that. There was the Shankill Road and there was the Crumlin Road. And what divided them was a church and just an old house. And then you could turn around at the top and go down one or the other, which left all the shops totally open to any kind of, military action anyone wanted to take on the population. And they did it often. So I was walking, and you think, who would ever walk there then? It's where the shops are. You got to go and get your shopping. So we were walking there one day, and we heard this screech. Me and my friend Dan and Willie, who's no longer with us, walking down that street, and we heard the screech. It was a lovely summer's day. And here was the sad thing. All the sad, what you would call losers, all the guys that never had a job in their lives would be standing outside, the bookmakers. What do you call them in America, Christian, where people can bet on horses?
Gamblers. I don't have a term for it, but
Yeah.
I am sure
But
there's one.
do they exist? Because I see a lot of shows and it's illegal or something, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not here. You can go in and actually put a bet on a
Yeah.
horse. You don't have to do
Yeah.
it illegally.
Right.
So they're all standing there. Obviously, their horses didn't come in, so they get their unemployment benefit. They go in there, they bet horses, they lose all their money, and then they just stand there all day and just whistle at the girls. To be honest, they were humorous. They were harmless. You felt sorry for them. They had no ambitions at all beyond winning on the horses. And you know what, Christian? They were the happiest guys I ever saw. They're all standing there all day laughing and whistling at girls. So anyway, we hear the screech. We know what it is. It's the paramilitaries. It's the Protestant loyalists, and they're coming around the car. All the windows are open and the machine guns are out, right?
Yeah.
And they just right across those shops.
Yeah.
We're just young teenage guys, me and my mates. We were on the floor immediately, right? And it was instantaneous. It was like, did I even, did God push me on the floor? I don't remember jumping, but we were all on the ground, every one of us, except for the guys at the bookmakers. For some reason, they didn't drop, and so they're all shot. And I said to Dan, "Am I shot?" And he says, "No, am I shot?" I says, "No, we're all okay." And we started laughing, and we laughed and laughed. Lovely summer's day, just laughing at the blue sky, never been so deliriously happy until, of course, we heard the screams and the cries because they'd shot all the guys at the bookmakers. They were all shot. So I lived through a definite, more than one, by the way. That's just one that was very sensational. One near-death experience, and came out the other end of it happier than I'd ever been in my life, and carried on with that idea that really, what can hurt me beyond this? You know, death couldn't take me there. What problem is London? You know, I just went to London with practically no money and lived homelessly.
And a couple things, I talk to friends all the time who work at these game studios. They work at jobs they don't like, right? And I talk with some of them who feel like they've gotten out, and they feel like they've had this revelation where they have this manager that made their lives horrible, but then eventually they realize this person can't hurt me, they can't kill me, like that. Like the worst that's going to happen is I'm going to get fired and I can't afford to go out and spend $200 on dinner every night. That's like, but they're still going to be able to eat. They're going to be able to at least be able to afford rice and vegetables and chicken, clean food, and eat it and live well, and actually potentially be healthier than they were before. So they realize that there's actually nothing that anyone can do to them that's going to make their lives worse. Like no one can kill you generally, especially when considering like whether you take a job or not, or take a risk, and I guess even from that perspective of like having those near-death experiences, I think we're all on the verge of dying at any given point. It's like you're driving down the highway at 70 miles per hour, one little, and
there's cars coming at you like that,
and you're gone. Or one other person who makes a mistake and you're dead. It's like I think that living your life, like, I guess with ultimate purpose and not having any regrets in terms of doing the things that you truly want to do, I think that's the only way to live a meaningful life.
I agree. I was in America and I was driving down the wrong side of the road, like an because just because you go in the auto drive, you go, all right, so I'm comfortable in America now, and went into the wrong lane and started driving down, and there's this guy coming toward me, and I think, is this guy crazy? And then I thought, I'm in the wrong lane. And there was an Applebee's, and both of us turned into the Applebee's. To get out of this situation. And I was so apologetic, I said, no. And the guy was going, oh, it's all right,
It's totally fine.
It wouldn't have been on the highway.
Right. Well, and I don't know, I was, do you know Ahmed Al-Dori, the other YouTube artist?
I don't think so. I'm a bit lost in what's going on at the minute. I don't know what. I'll tell you what, I probably know his work, because here's the thing with Instagram: it comes at you like this. You don't catch the names right away. In the old days, you get a book and you'd know the person. But what was his name again?
Ahmed Al-Dori.
No, I don't think so. But I'll look it up.
He's a great artist, and he has a pretty big YouTube channel. I think he has like 300,000 subs or something. And I had him on my podcast before, and we were talking about how, he's from the Middle East. His family is Iraqi, I believe, and he was telling me the story about his family had to flee Iraq, and he was on the verge of being executed several times. 7-year-old kid, and telling me stories about how like they had to hide their American passports, in their tires or something, because if they had, the military had found them, they would have killed them on the spot, or a story about how, when they had gotten in there, they had to flee to the American embassy. And when they had gotten there, all of the American soldiers had pointed guns at them, assuming that they were a suicide bomber trying to drive to the, and the only reason they were able to get through is because Ahmed's father spoke English and had, all the correct papers. But like now he's in America painting pictures of like painting fantasy illustrations, living very comfortably, and but like within a couple decades, he was in this horribly tragic environment where the people that didn't get out there, they were either killed or they were oppressed by the government.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. Again, it's such a strange world we live in. It's
Yeah.
like um, I really truly fundamentally believe that every single person that's alive is going to go through some horrible tragedy in their at some point. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
Joni Mitchell said it. I thought, is she going to give us some sage advice? And she said something so simple. I thought, really, is that the best? And I think about it often now, and she's absolutely right. She says you'll be sick, and you'll be well, you'll be happy, you'll be sad, but it'll all pass. I thought, well, we all know that, but do we think about it that often? And if we did, then we wouldn't fret so much. So you're sick, oh, it's the end of the world. You'll be all right. It'll be fine. You know, I'm sad. It's okay. You'll be happy again. If we can just
yeah,
keep that in mind that all things pass, then we should be able to get through this life. But there's no, I'm always like you, Christian. I'm always thinking about Jesus. Here I am, happy as go Larry, and I came from a terrible place. But you've just described something worse. And I wish that we could do more. That's what we did the Ukraine thing, and I felt
yeah,
good about it. Couldn't understand anybody that would not want to, join in. But we can only do so much. Like, I think there was a philosopher on once, he said, everyone would go and help a puppy stuck on a train line. You'd go, just run across. If the train's coming, you go and help that puppy. But you're not going to help 1,000 people in an earthquake.
yeah,
You might change the channel because they're not in your purview. They're not actually in your world. They're in a different place, in a different atmosphere that doesn't ring or resonate with you. So you can let it go. It's incredible what we can put aside. We can set it aside. Like when Elon Musk bought Twitter, I thought, oh come on, Elon, I think you're the greatest guy in the world. Couldn't you have taken that money and just fixed the world? Just fixed world hunger with that. I'd like to think I would do that too. But would I? I don't know. I'm not Elon Musk. I have not gone into his world and seen
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, it's
what can we do?
complicated. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
very complicated.
yeah. Well, and the other side of that is, everyone would go and help the puppy on the train tracks, but it's easy to help people that you like. It's easy to
Yeah,
do things that are helping things that you like, but it's actually extremely difficult to help people that you actually actively dislike.
yeah,
And I think that's part of the irony of all this stuff is that, like, I think that some people might get caught up in them being a great person, but they've only ever been given chances to help and do things that are actually easy to do. It's
yeah.
like it's easy to give money to a friend, but it's hard to accept somebody that has done you wrong and forgive them, and try to help them in whatever way you can.
Yeah.
um
I think forgiving easy is more better for your own mental health than it is for the person you've forgiven. I
yeah,
think forgive easy. I think is a thing we should all do. Never hold on to your grudge. Like I heard, I think it was Donald Trump had said to Richard Branson once at a dinner. He says, "I've got a list of all the people that have not helped me, and I'm going to get my revenge on them."
yeah,
And Richard Branson said, "How can he live a life like that? Because he's got a different mindset." Now, there's two billionaires, and one has a different outlook than the other. One's extremely happy, and the other one, I don't know. I've ever seen him really genuinely laugh. I've seen a smirk. I don't consider a smirk a laugh.
yeah,
Remember how I was saying with you and Stan, I don't trust anyone with no sense of humor.
yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen Putin laugh. I've seen him
yeah,
smirk. Doesn't count. I've seen him
yeah,
smile with satisfaction. Doesn't count. I have
yeah,
never seen him wholeheartedly laugh like Gorbachev did, and his
yeah,
predecessor from way back. He used to laugh his head
yeah,
off. He used to
yeah,
dance and stuff. I trusted him. I
yeah,
trusted him. That was the time when the world was brighter. It was brighter
yeah,
because there was humor in it.
yeah,
But yeah, now you've got me in that conflict again. What can we do? How can we
yeah.
help? We have to start from where we can. We have to
Well,
help those around us and branch out if we can.
yeah,
Become rich like Elon Musk, help more people.
yeah. Well, and I guess, circling back to the value of art thing, the meaning of art in the first place is that you know, sometimes the only thing that you can do is paint a picture. You know, maybe that's actually the best thing you could do. You know,
Yeah.
it's
That's
not
what.
like going,
Can
yeah,
I just stop you there, Chris? Because
yeah, absolutely,
I don't mean with money.
yeah,
You
right,
know, to teach a man how to fish, and he'll
yeah,
fish forever. I mean that. I don't think throwing money at someone is ever helpful. I think it. I'll give you a friend. Hold on to your thought too, Christian.
yeah,
I when I joined the Navy when I was very young, and I was in a position where I made just as much money if I'd have been in the Navy 40 years later. The pay scale didn't change. So I was a merchant, deckhand, and I'd gone up to Series 3, which was the highest pay grade. So I had the highest pay grade in the Navy in a very affluent company, British Petroleum. So I would come home with tons of money, and even with place I came from, hardly anybody had a job. So I would take everybody out on a Saturday, all
yeah,
my friends from school. So I've done a bit of what you would say, what would you do if you had $1 billion?
yeah,
In the scale of the world, I had $1 billion because
yeah,
I had an inexhaustible amount of money for
yeah,
all our needs, which were
yeah,
just simple. So we'd go and we'd always get fish and chips. We'd always get Knickerbocker Glories, which I loved. And then we'd just walk around town and, have a good time. And I
yeah,
would pay for that. And so what happened was I thought my friends, and I didn't do it to begin with, or never did it actually, as far as I remember, for gratification. I did it because I
yeah,
loved my friends, and it was, I was always kind of a socialist-minded person, where it's just money. Look what I have, let's go and spend it. So we did that for a while, and what happened was people on the fringes, you know how you have a tier of friends? You
yeah,
go, here's my best
yeah,
friend. When you're a kid,
right,
there's my best friend,
yeah,
You could actually
right,
say best and nobody would be offended. So I had my
yeah,
best friend and my next best friend and that. And then you would go down the tiers and I would meet people I haven't seen for a while and they go, I heard you taking people out for Saturday down at
yeah,
Fusco's.
yeah,
I'd go, yeah, we go out there on a Saturday. He says, well, you never invited me.
yeah,
And I go, yeah, and I saw that often and it was horrible.
yeah,
And
right,
then I realized right there that there was more people disliking me now than people liking me for what I
right,
was doing. It was
yeah,
horrible. So what do we do with that? Throwing money at things is not a good idea. It it
yeah,
it always creates resentment. I think it always the person even that you're giving the money to is in some way feeling like they're a lower tier.
yeah, yeah,
They're going, oh, you're aren't I a man too, or aren't I a woman too?
yeah, yeah,
Why would I need your charity?
yeah,
So it might come to that too with the person in New York. That you know, who do you think you are? That you have to
yeah,
feed me? You know,
yeah,
I don't know. So that's what I mean. Giving people money is not. I don't think it's a good idea. I think
absolutely.
I think trying to work a way around getting involved in an organization and helping people is the way to do it. Sorry,
Yeah.
Christian, I had to get that out because that's
Oh yeah,
something
no, no, no problem at all.
that can come
Well,
back to
I
bite you.
absolutely. Well, I think that, I mean, I've spent time around some wealthy people in my life. You know, my dad, growing up, my dad was executives at comic book companies. You know, he was publisher at Marvel for a little while.
Who was he,
Vice
Christian? What was his
uh,
name?
John Nee.
John Nee.
Uh,
He published
yeah,
Marvel for a while.
yeah. He was publisher at Marvel recently, and then he was an executive at DC Comics. He's always stayed on the outskirts of, like, he's always avoided public life.
All right.
Um, but I grew up around Jim Lee and Ashley Wood rented my childhood home
Yeah, you were
from
saying about that's
us.
what I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
gonna. And I meant to
yeah, yeah,
ask you too earlier. Your
yeah.
dad was an illustrator as well. Did you say?
No, no, he was on the business side of art.
He's in the business
Um,
side. He knew Ashley
yeah,
Wood. That's why I was going.
yeah,
Remember
yeah,
to ask Christian how that comes about because we didn't have as
yeah,
much time last time. Yeah.
yeah.
So I wouldn't have known your dad in the paper form where I read the publishers. Because I used to read who was the publishers. Because I
Oh,
went
yeah,
when I stopped reading comics, it was the 80s, 90s were gone. I didn't. I don't know
yeah,
what happened in those decades
yeah,
at all.
yeah. It was recently. He was a publisher from 2018 to 2021, I
Is
think.
that right?
But I've been around wealth my entire life. It's like I was friends with this kid who he was a Saudi Arabian prince. Yeah, literally, he would pick us up in his Ferrari and take us to go bowling and stuff. And and I would meet these people. And I'm not saying that kid specifically is not living a meaningful life, but I'd meet people who make five, 600, $700,000 a year,
Yeah.
and they hated their lives. They hated their
Oh yeah.
jobs. They didn't like their wives or husbands.
Yeah.
They didn't enjoy their lives, and they had, by the end of it, they'd spent all the money. They made millions and millions of dollars. And I think about that, and I'm like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
What's like, what's actually happening? And um, I would meet these people who would be going to, on the societal level, going to people that are beneath them for guidance on how to live a meaningful life.
Yeah.
Multimillionaires just asking, like, what do I do? Like, how do I become a better artist? How do I become a better person? And I found that it's like the key to living a meaningful life is, I mean, it's a cliche, but it's so not money, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's something way deeper than, it's like,
Yes.
again, having the capacity and ability to take a walk anywhere and see the beauty and what's around you and see the gratitude. It's like,
Yeah.
when you walk outside, do you see the fact that, oh, I'm not in the place I want to be. I want to be in a bigger house, or do you see, like, oh, there's this beautiful tree, there's a beautiful sunset, there's a beautiful sky, I could breathe the air, I have my legs, I can walk.
Yeah.
It's like all about fun, like perspective and gratitude for the life that you have versus what you want to have versus, yeah. I mean, it's exactly that.
Yeah. It's perspective as well, and actually, there's an inverted snobbery to it too. When I came from that really hard environment and I saw people that were wealthy, part of me went, what's your problem, pal? Got everything you need. But they didn't. They didn't have emotional fulfillment. That was the main thing. I had that. And so part of me was quite hard on them. Jimmy Cagney, the old actor, used to said it once. He says he felt sorry for rich kids because everything was hard for them. And so nothing was hard for me. And that's not to disparage rich kids, because when I started meeting people, like I say, artists move in all circles. When I met very wealthy people, I found them to be absolutely delightful people.
Yeah.
On the whole, I really did, because they weren't scratching and clawing for everything. They're already, they didn't have the need to do that. So the people that were the most problematic for me were those people that were trying to get there. And I remember a really lovely guy. He would come into this. I was working in Pinewood Studios when I was in my early 20s, and even though here was a big disparity of two things happening at the same time, was I was working in one of the biggest movie production companies in the world, and I was the star artist in there, and at the same time I was homeless.
Yeah.
And so I would have to, and I was forging my bus pass to get to Pinewood Studios. And then it would be so far off the end, it was actually beyond the end of the tube line in London. I would have to run then. I was as fit as a fiddle. I used to run from the tube station through Pinewood Forest, because it's an actual forest, run through the forest, come out the other end with twigs in my hair, and then walk up to the security gate and walk in the gates. And the guy would go, "You would park your car in the town again, Patrick?" I says, "Yeah, I like the healthy walk, I didn't have a car. So I had that, and there was this kid that used to come in as a kid. Back then he wasn't a kid, he was my age, he was in his 20s. And he would sit beside me, and he was called Rupert or something. He was wonderful. He was absolutely lovely. He says, "Oh, can I make you a cup of tea, Patrick?" I says, "Oh, that'd be great, Rupert." And he was sitting, he would chat with me about everything. And he was rich. I could see it. Rolex, just sitting there. Rich kid. And, the bouffant hair that you see in those Tales of Manners, and they walk around Manners and they have the hair. And I'd go, "Oh, he's got the floppy hair and everything." And then I said to John Rubens, the actor's agent, because we shared James Bond's room. The room where they come in from Moneypenny? You know that?
Yeah.
You look out the two big windows. I was at the bay windows. I had that because the guy next door, Peter Snell, he owned British Lion Productions. He owned that. And so he put me there. And I said to John Rubens, I says, "John, why is Rupert here?" And he said, he's come to learn from you. I says, "But he's not drawing anything." He says, "No, how to be successful."
Yeah. Right.
I says, "What do you mean? If he's not," I couldn't get my head around it. He says, to be a successful person, how to motivate himself to do things.
Yeah.
He had no motivation. He had too much wealth. He didn't know what he was to do with himself. And they were hoping a bit of what I had would rub off, a bit of,
Yeah.
oh, you know, run through the forest, you know?
Yeah.
How do you get through life without the buffer? They were looking for that to rub off on him. He was lovely. He was a lovely guy. But I think his life was hard because he had everything. It was hard for him. So, but he seemed happy enough. But I've met people where their life's hard because they've got everything and they're not happy. Many
Yeah.
times.
Absolutely.
Many times.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's again, it's a cliche in modern fiction. It's always like, in Aladdin, the princess of I can't remember, but she wanted to escape into the town and meets Aladdin, the street rat,
Yeah.
and I think it's like I remember I was doing this podcast with cynics and Ahmed, and I normally, so I have this sign that says we're recording a podcast,
Yeah,
please
yeah,
come
yeah.
say hi.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this couple came up to us, and they, a New Zealand guy and his wife, who's Californian, and they were telling us all these stories about how they had traveled all around the world. They had traveled around, Saharas of Africa, and, had arrived in bush planes and taken safaris all over the place. And they were saying it's like, the way that you're successful is that you don't, like if you're always looking down on people for, if you're looking down on everyone, you're never going to be able to find any meaning in your life. You need to look either up or laterally. It's like looking down on people is a recipe towards being fundamentally resentful. I really believe that everyone, no matter if it's like the lowest person in your life, they have something fun. They have something really important to teach you.
Yeah.
Like, a homeless person is a lot better than me in New York City, is a lot better at me than like finding a place to sleep at night, or dealing with cold, or dealing with a lot of horrible things that I have no experience with, that I might crumble under the pressure if I was put in those situations. And
I suffered from an inverted snobbery for a long time. I thought all rich people were bad people, not all of them, but I was suspicious of them. I thought they were, how did they get rich? What skullduggery was in place to make that happen? And why am I so poor? And why was everyone around me so poor? And so we were born into whatever society it is, and it comes with those prejudices, because there was genuine prejudice where I came from. That whole war situation sparked off a civil rights march because the Catholics wanted a vote. They didn't have a vote. They had a vote, but it was a lie vote. It was a pretend vote. It was a gerrymander, which is still going on in America, isn't it? So the gerrymander meant that the more land you owned, the more votes you had. And the Irish Catholics didn't have any land, and so their votes were worthless. And so they marched for one man, one vote. Sexist term back then, but that's what it was. One man, one vote. And so that's what they wanted. And then sometime, even that wouldn't be enough for them because they were the minority. But one day in the future, they would have a vote that would mean something, if they ever had that. And maybe on the other side, some of the more moderate Protestants, there was plenty of them, would vote for whatever they were voting for too. And you would have some kind of claim to it. That's what sparked off the whole, that end of it, apart from all the killings that were going on, because they were killing Catholics before that. But that's what sparked it off. And it went on for 30 years. So I always thought that side of the road were awful. I thought they're awful. And yet there's Kenneth Branagh made that beautiful ode to Belfast, and he was on that side of the road. And yet on that side of the road there was poverty too. So somehow they managed to take the poor from both sides and put them against each other like that. It was always, and so I was very suspicious of wealthy people. I remember the bus broke down once. The bus came up from the city bus, and it broke down before it went round the corner. That corner I talked about, which went down to the Shankill Road. So one end was Protestant, one end was Catholic. And the whole trouble was not a religious thing. It just happened to be what they were. Because the original English come over, they were the Protestants. And the bus broke down, and all the building workers got out, and they walked to my side of the street, and all the people in the suits got off, and they walked to the other side of the street. And we saw it there. It was right there as a metaphorical image of who was wealthy and who wasn't. But they were very unhappy, the building workers get off, they're laughing their heads off, even though they had nothing. And the office workers were, they're just in their minds going tomorrow, tomorrow.
Yeah.
They're thinking when the horn goes on a building site, all woes are finished. There's no more thought of the day, and so there's a happiness in that. There's a happiness in you do a hard day's work and then you go home and you have a knees up, lead you straight to the pub.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the moral of that tale is wealth doesn't make you happy. So you've got to be happy before you get the wealth, or the wealth is probably going to make you more unhappy.
Yeah. I was watching this video the other day where the guy was talking about how like people are always compromising their artwork to fit Instagram. They're like, oh, really? I'm going to change. Well, I'm going to change what I draw to get more likes on Instagram or something.
Oh, I see.
And it's like, well, which is a fundamentally flawed philosophy, because you might change and you actually might start getting those likes, but then the idea of doing art in general you become a slave to the algorithm. You're no longer thinking, you're just trying to make things that the algorithm likes in order to have more likes on your Instagram posts.
That's grim. And I noticed as well, Christian, and I think they should do it with Instagram, is what if we took the number of likes off so you don't see who likes anybody?
I think that is a setting on Instagram you can have, actually.
No, I mean Instagram does it.
Yeah. Oh, like they across the board.
They just blanket don't show likes.
Well, I think part of the darker side of social media is that the numbers, like there's a dark game going on where people are paying a lot of attention to, how many followers you have, who's following who, like there's that, there's a study of monkey psychology that happened. That it's like, high value monkeys, and I don't know what group of monkeys is, but a group of monkeys, they look at where the highest value monkey is looking. So if the highest value monkey is looking at a tree, all the other monkeys will be like, oh, what's so important about that tree, Yeah. And I think we have that same version where it's like, if everyone in a society or in a group of people is valuing one thing, and in Instagram, the validation is just the number of followers.
Yeah.
Like, I have 900,000 people that have clicked follow. That means my word, what I'm saying, is more valuable than somebody else's, because I've gotten that seal of approval from so many people.
Yeah, and there we are again. We're straight back to the schoolyard.
Yeah.
Where who's the most popular kid? But did you ever see, Christian, how close we are to monkeys? Have you ever seen the experiment where a guy comes in, there's two monkeys in a cage, and they can see each other, and he gives one monkey a banana, and he gives the other monkey a half a banana, or something like that? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. The other monkey, and it freaks out, right?
Bang, bang, bang.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So they're banging on the cage. So
they're
aware. They're absolutely aware of, disparity. They're going, he's wealthier than me. Where's my other half? So I remember, if you think like that.
Absolutely. I remember hearing the story where there was this guy who was researching monkeys, and he was killed by monkeys because he had gone into this enclosure and he had given one monkey a gift, and I'm gonna put, this is not exactly what happened, but it's the same premise. But so he gave one monkey a gift, like a cookie or banana or something, but he had forgotten the other monkey's gift, so he didn't have it on him. So
little did he know
that monkey came and like ripped him apart, because he felt it totally just annihilated him, And it's like, that's us, man. That's totally us. Like, I'm not proud to admit this, but I care about who follows me and how many followers I have too. Like, I don't care about it so much to where I'm like, it's not a huge thing, but I'm aware of it at least. It's something that I will like check.
Oh yeah, we're not two gods sitting here going.
Yeah. Right.
People shouldn't worry. Of course we do. It hurts everybody. It hurts everybody because at the end of the day, I think every single person in the world wants is to be acknowledged. I think that's it. I think that's the fundamental kernel of what we all want, to be acknowledged. Beyond, we need to eat, we need to do whatever we need to do to survive. Beyond that, I think it's that. I think if we're not acknowledged, we feel worthless. It comes to us all at some point anyway. I mean, some people might rise above that, I don't know. But for me, that's what I've found with every single person.
Yeah.
And I think if you show anyone a kindness at all, they perk up. They suddenly,
Yeah.
because they're being acknowledged. They're
Right.
being acknowledged for their worth. And I think the worst kind of boss is the hard boss. I
Yeah.
think they're non-productive. I think
Yeah.
if you think you're being hard and they'll work harder, that's not going to happen. It's not going
Yeah.
to happen. There was there was British Rail and a film crew went on. Who do they think they are? They think they're gods too. But it was comical and tragic at the same time. They went down to the underground on the night shift workers to look for the night shift workers, and they couldn't find them. And they undid a panel, and they were sleeping inside there. They were all sleeping. Now that's obviously they've got a horrible boss there. They'd rather pretend to work than not work. Whereas
Yeah.
you've got a really good. I know a guy. He's called Eddie Blow here. It's a funny name and everything. He acknowledges it, but he's really nice to his workers, and they do great creative work. When I used to work for him as a freelance illustrator, and we would all get together in our room, and it was just fun.
Yeah.
Was it hard? Not at all. Was it even work? It was like that Tom Sawyer thing, painting the fence. The tale of Tom Sawyer?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was like that. We didn't think we were working. We were having fun with Eddie.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
did great creative work. And
Yeah.
that's the way to do it. That's how you do it. So I think, that crew, when we were together, felt valued. We were
Yeah.
being listened to. We were being heard. I
Absolutely.
think that's it. A little kindness every day is what I'm trying to do now, if I can.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Well, I guess part of something I've noticed is it's pretty tragic how little genuine encouragement somebody needs, like genuine encouragement, in
Yeah.
order to get off their ass and actually put in good work. I think everyone wants to do a good job. It's just whether or not they think that they're going to be acknowledged for the effort that they put in.
Yeah.
And like I'm sure you've noticed this with some of your students, but when you give a student like you might give the student for the first time in their entire lives a compliment,
Yeah.
like a meaningful, not like a, oh, you just, like a gold star kind of compliment, but it's like, oh, you should work on this, but then you did this really well, like a genuine compliment. It's I don't know, again, it's tragic how
Yeah.
little encouragement most people get in their lives on a day-to-day basis.
It's true. Sure. And it's a product also of generations. I mean, imagine the generation that came back from World War II.
Yeah.
Imagine, let's say you're a 40-year-old sergeant let's say you're a 50-year-old sergeant. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe. Let's say you're a 50-year-old sergeant at World War II and you come home, right? You've been through World War One, World War II, and the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
You must think that the world is just hell all the time.
Yeah.
And so you come back into a world now and you see your kids, and let's say it's America, where the war hasn't touched, apart from emotionally, hasn't touched the landscape. You come back to America and it's all soda fountains and everything's terrific. And the kid's complaining about something. And the father goes off the rails and starts beating the kid. That was a generation that couldn't understand, that there's pain even when there's no physical pain. There's emotional angst that's just as powerful as any physical thing that can happen to you, and they didn't understand that, and so that's where it comes from. And so that generation that got beat around the head weren't as badly off as the ones that went to war, but they're still thinking, let's beat the kid across the head to get them to be better. They think of beat on the head. I got beaten around the head, and my dad apologizes for it now. So he's grown as well. But it wasn't just him, it was every single guy.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the TV show Mad Men? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Did you remember the scene where the kids playing up and it was that generational shift right there? The kids playing up in the hallway, and a guy gives them the terriblest backhanded slap in the world and knocks the kid off his feet. And he's not his father.
Yeah.
So the kid's screaming blue murder, and the father comes in, and he says, "What happened?" He says, he was playing up, and I sorted him out. He says, "Oh, thanks."
Yeah. Right.
So that was the generational thing. They didn't think there was anything wrong with that. They thought that was good parenting.
Right.
So you're right. So there's still levels of that. If you go down lower class, it's terrible to even say lower class, but if you go down into a harder world, people are still clobbering their kids, I think. They're still slapping their kids around. And when they come into your classroom, like you say, you give them a bit of kindness, and it's overwhelming to them sometimes. They don't know what just hit them. They really don't. I had
Yeah.
a student said to me once that she had a friend in my class. I says, "Oh, who was it?" And she told me the name of the kid. And I says, "Oh, she's a lovely kid. She always sits at the front." She says, "Yeah, you're her only friend, you know." So she didn't trust anybody else. You know, she came into my class to be, you know, to be loved in some way that she didn't get it anywhere else. Where I would say to her, "That's a lovely job you're doing there. Oh, that's very nice. If you just change that." And their genuine kindnesses. It's not I'm kind to you because you're sad. I didn't even know she was sad. There were kindnesses, and I acknowledge that you're doing good work there. And if you fix this here, I think that'll even be better still. And she'd do it, and then she'd get more acknowledgement for it. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's you know, we're talking deep. We're going deep into the human psyche here.
Yeah,
And there
absolutely.
seems to be, you know, it's a hard struggle, but I think the best we can all do is be a little kinder to each other. And
Yeah,
when I grew up, being tough was the idea, you know?
yeah,
You had to fight with your fists, and I hated it. I hated it. Every fist fight I was in, I couldn't stand it. I was
yeah,
going, I don't like this.
yeah,
Why is this so revered? Why, when John Wayne knocks someone across the bar, it's fun, and when
yeah,
I do it, it's not fun at all. And when
yeah,
someone does it to me, it's horrible.
yeah,
Why is this? Why is violence so revered?
yeah,
Why is it supposed to be fun when it's not
yeah,
fun at all?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
we're all victims of everything
Yeah,
around us. What
yeah,
can we do about
definitely.
it? Be kinder.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, and you know, I think that non-patronizing kindness is also very important. You
Yeah,
know,
that's why I wanted to
yeah,
highlight that there.
yeah,
Definitely, I think if you compliment someone falsely,
yeah.
it's not worth doing.
It does more harm than good a lot of the
I
time,
think
I
so. Yeah.
think. Yeah. Um, how, how much longer do you have, by the way?
I've just got as long as you need, Christian. I'm on
Okay, cool.
holiday.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Sounds good.
I'll tell you what my plans are from this point.
Yeah.
I have officially taken a break after just working like a dog without being not I don't consider it work. I've just been doing a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that I love doing, and it's time every once in a while to just check yourself and say, Patrick, it's time to stop. It's time to
Yeah.
stop this, even though you love it, right?
Yeah.
So I have made a definite stop, and I think if you give yourself a definite stop like that and say,
Yeah.
I'm not going in there, it's such a feeling of freedom. So I'm on
Yeah.
holiday
Yeah.
now, and next week I'm off to Europe and off
Nice.
to Ireland for 6 weeks. So I'm doing a little bit of your
Great.
sketchy van stuff. I'm off.
Exciting, man.
Yeah, I'm
That's
off
cool.
traveling. I'm off to the
Nice.
Netherlands.
Yeah. I don't think enough people, you know, do that. I do that favor for themselves. You know, they're either on the grind or they're aspiring to be on the grind. You know, the path to,
Yeah,
you know, having that success. And um, I know. And again, I think it's like uh, whenever I think somebody becomes a workaholic when they experience a little bit of that true genuine kindness, and then they keep chasing that.
yeah,
They're chasing that instead of actually chasing the money a lot of the time. You know.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, chasing money makes you sad. I mean, part of me still has it. I mean, it's never going to go away. Part of me, when I said to you, I'm going to be away for 6 weeks, part of me is going, that's 6 weeks income gone, you
yeah.
know? And 6 weeks of bills that still have to be paid. You know, I still have to pay all the bills. I'm
Yeah.
not going to leave my wife here and say, you pay them. You know, it's not going to be like that. So
Yeah.
I've still got to do that. And
Yeah.
also pay for the trip while I'm there.
Yeah.
So that's a
Yeah.
fortune. You know, if if you're not if you're not in the economics and you go, oh, I'm going to go away for 6 weeks, just imagine the cost of that. Really,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
you have to support yourself there, support what you've left, and have
Yeah.
no income in that time, and then have to
Yeah.
bring that income back in. So part of me is still going like that, but another part of me goes, you know, one day I will be. Stephen Silver said it, didn't he? Or was it? Did he? I'm not too sure. When you're on your deathbed, what do people say? What are their last wants? What did they want? I wish I
Yeah.
had done what?
Yeah.
Work more? That's
Yeah.
not on anyone's agenda at all.
Right.
It's not
Yeah.
exist on a deathbed at all. So yeah, and every time I do take a break like this, every time I travel, I feel better and I'm smarter
Yeah.
for it.
Well, I also think that you know, feeling safe is almost like a trap. You know, it's
It
like
is.
um, you know, that secure feeling of feeling safe. You know, it prevents a lot of people from experiencing I guess, the true breadth of what life can be, I think, and the reality of all this stuff is I think that safety is a lie, that doesn't actually exist,
Yeah. And neither does
like,
property ownership either.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, well, you're going to die one day. And also historically, land has been taken away from people,
That's right. And
houses
we live
burned
on
down,
land that was taken away from people right now.
Yeah. And it's like, that, again, that fear of having stuff taken away from you, it could, though, like, I totally think that working for security is a totally reasonable thing to do,
Yeah.
but there are diminishing returns on how much that return, that feeling of security actually is real,
Yeah.
like at a certain point, it becomes like a faux security that, it's more fear-based than it is actually logic-based, but
Yeah, one of my favorite, my favorite movie of all time is an old one called Cool Hand Luke. Have you ever heard of it?
mm,
Oh, Christian, you got to see it. Cool.
I'll,
Paul Newman.
I'll,
Cool Hand Luke. Luke.
cool. Oh, oh no, I don't think I've heard of it, but
Oh,
yeah,
and it's one of those movies. Once again, I'll watch it now, and it doesn't. It's not even hokey. It's just still
yeah,
brilliant. Still a great movie. I
yeah,
think you could release it today, and it would win an Oscar.
yeah,
So in that movie, he's gone all nihilistic. What's the point? He's come back from war, and he's cutting the heads off parking meters because he just doesn't like parking meters. They're
yeah,
restrictive, and so they throw him in the jail for it. And he keeps committing misdemeanors in the jail, where he can't get out of the jail. He's just put himself in a position, and he just won't lie down for the guards. He won't do it at all. And there's a moment in it where he plays a card game with the other prisoners, and he's completely, absolutely poker faced, and he takes all their money, and the guy goes, "You gotta get." He's obviously got four kings, and he throws his cards out. There's nothing there at all, and they call him Cool Hand Luke, and he says sometimes nothing's a pretty cool hand, and it's basically a metaphorical idea of the whole thing. It's basically that's his whole approach to life, is that if you strip everything away, and there's nothing, you've got total freedom. You've got complete freedom. And there's a lot more depth in the movie beyond that little scene. It sounds like a little, it's a scene that people remember in the movie, but it was a really terrific film for showing that one man has got this solidness inside them that will always keep them going, no matter how horrible the situation is. He will always survive it. And I identify with Cool Hand Luke so much, that character anyway, all the way through my life. I thought no matter how bad it gets, nothing's a pretty cool hand. I've got options here. I've got tons of options.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and I guess there's nothing that most people can do to you that's gonna make it not worth doing.
Yeah.
It's like people are generally, again, I think there are cases where this isn't true, but people are a lot more sturdy than they give themselves credit for.
Yeah, I think so. And I think taking away security does that. I think at the end of the day, what are you going to do? Lie down and cry? Maybe.
Yeah.
But you're still going to have to get up, and you'll get up stronger. You have to.
Right.
Well, you see it with
Yeah.
kids. Kids falls down, they start screaming blue murder. But if no one comes to help them, they just get up again. So that's the beginning of it. They want to be lifted up like this. And if you don't, I'm not advocating that. This is observation. They get up and they stop crying. So part of the crying becomes an automatic reaction. They fall down, they cry, like a bird, like chirping for their, the mama bird to come and pick them up when they can actually just pick themselves up.
Yeah.
So it sounds like I'm being a tough guy there, but I'm not. That's what I've noticed.
Well, I mean, I believe in fundamental human. I can't think of the word, but I was listening to Jimmy Carr, the comedian, talk.
Oh, yeah.
He was being very serious, but he was saying, well, he's brutal. And he was talking about how, like, and he was speaking genuinely, like, I'm not joking around. Like, he was saying that, you hear a 40-year-old say, like, oh man, like, any total dickhead of a 40-year-old be like, oh, my parents were assholes, that's why I'm a dickhead. You're like, oh, that 40-year-old's being ridiculous, like he should have gotten his life together. But then you hear a 14-year-old say the same thing, and you're like, oh, I'm going to give that 15-year-old a little bit more credit. But at some point in between, you take away that distinction. You're like, the older they get And at some point you're like, oh, that person should have just gotten their life together. I don't care that their parents were mean to them. There's no excuse to be an asshole
Yeah.
or to, and part of the sad reality of all that stuff is that some kids realize early on that it doesn't matter what their background is at all. No one cares. And the sooner that you can get over the idea that, the world owes you anything, the sooner you're going to be able to take complete responsibility for your own life and be responsible for your own happiness and your own comfort versus blaming it on somebody else,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I remember hearing something along those lines of, we're expecting something. We're expecting something. We think that we're the center of all the universe. Each one of us, at some point, we feel that. And in some ways we are. But someone said once, because I am shy, right? I was going to say, like a rough covering alcoholic, I am shy. And I have always been shy. But what am I going to do? Not go out? Am I never going to mingle? So I'm not a recovering shyaholic, but I am shy in my heart. So when I walk into a room, I'm always anxious that there's a lot of people there and I'm going to have to somehow navigate that.
Yeah.
And try and be genuine, which is very hard to do when you're a different person for every person. Like, for instance, when I'm talking to my dad, I'm respectful and different to when I'm talking with my mates, like my best friend. I would punch him in the arm. Maybe not, but you know what I mean. You could ruffle hair. I'm not going to ruffle my dad's hair. Do you know what I mean? But you do see these kids do that. You see kids that get up on their dad's hair and they ruffle their hair, and I go, Jesus, what kind of carry-on is that? That would be a death sentence where I came from. That kind of thing. So we got all these things. But someone said once, the ultimate narcissist is the shy person. Because they think everyone's looking at them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And the minute I thought that, I went, I'm free. I'm absolutely free.
Right.
That's a brilliant insight. If I'm shy, I'm a narcissist, so stop being shy. And so that's how I treat it. Nobody's looking at me. When I realized no one was looking at me and actually genuinely saw that they weren't, I was totally relaxed. I felt terrific. But that's terrible now, because I don't know what I'm going to do now, Christian, because I'm just about to go to a convention where I'm the guest of honor. And they are going to be looking at me. They are actually going to be looking at me. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I need a different mind power.
Well, I don't know. Again, it's strange. It's like you hear these stories of, you can go and be a guest of honor one day, and then the next day you're in a coffee shop and no one cares who you are. And it's a strange thing, being in proximity to Proco, because a lot of our people in the art world know what Proco is, but then most people don't know what Proco is. So it's like being the king or being around a little kingdom, a little, and then it's like
about that.
But then it's like no one actually cares. It's not actually real.
That's right. You should put some turrets up though, so more people can see.
Oh, it's just some what?
Some turrets. Put some turrets up on the Proco building.
Are those the
on the castles? And the little...
okay, the flag things. Okay,
so people can see it's a castle.
I don't know. It's like I remember seeing Kim Jong-gi, the Korean artist, gave an interview, and he was talking about how, like, you do these videos and they get 100 million views or something, you become world famous, and then you're in your studio by yourself. Like, no matter what. Like, I've said this before on my podcast, but the act of being an artist is the same whether you're super famous or a complete beginner. Like you're in your studio by yourself, just cranking away at images. You don't have adoring fans.
That's right.
And,
so look at this moment. Hold on. Hold that thought, Christian.
Yeah.
Now, I've just gone to a box that was just delivered, right? And it has my latest book in it. It sounds like it's proof, but it's not. It's relevant, right?
Yeah.
When I was watching Back to the Future years and years ago, when it first came out, I was a kid. And when Back to the Future came on, his successful life, how there's two different lives that could happen? And the successful life of his dad is he's a science fiction writer. And in the movie, he's a loser in the movie, right? What's perceived as a loser in the movie. And then he sees a different reality, a different alternate universe. And a box arrives, and the dad's opening the box, and he's all suave, and he's pinching his wife's bum and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And the kid from has gone back to the future and sees a different future goes, "My dad's cool." You know, this isn't the dad I know. And he opens the box and he pulls out, which I just did there. He pulls out his latest book, and there's another bunch in the box, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that is success. Like I would love that. And even before that, I set my mind to doing that. I'm going to be a writer of fantasy books or art books or something, and I'm going to have them published. And when I said to my dad or anyone around at the time, now imagine, think about once again what Harlem looked like in the 1970s, and everyone was poor. Nobody had any money. And I said, I'm gonna be a famous artist and write art books. I'm gonna do that. And that box arrived the other day, and I opened it, and I went, oh, that's really nice. But it's just normal now. That's another book, and that's what happens. You know, you get to your dream, and then it's just a normal life now.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you don't have the idea that you can do it, you're not going to do it. You're just not going to do it. And so I had that strange idea and followed it through, which was an impossible idea back then, and totally railed against as well. And now my dad, he gets I'm going to sign that for him and take it home. He has all my whole collection on his
awesome
his bookshelf. But at the very start, you know, and I'm not disparaging. This is parents looking after for their kids, going, that's a stupid idea because it's impossible. Because they're looking out for they're financially thinking about the future.
For your well-being.
They're not thinking about dreams.
Right.
So these are, you know, we're from first world countries. I know that's the wrong thing to say, but we're from countries that have at least, you know, a safety net of some kind, and not every country has. But you can always draw. You can always take a bit of charcoal and a piece of paper, and you never know where it's going to take you. It could take you in, like that artist you were talking about from Afghanistan. It was Afghanistan, wasn't it?
Iraq, I think, but
Iraq?
I can't remember honestly. It might have been Afghanistan, but the Middle East.
Yeah, he would have had the same thing. It's impossible because you know, you're looking at a desert landscape of just destruction, and you want to do this. You know, before you can even get a job and feed yourself, you're thinking of that. You need the dream. You definitely.
Absolutely. Well, and I guess part of the beauty of online is that people, it's a great equalizer of skills. You know,
it is.
It's like somebody with just pure drive and willingness to learn can learn just everything they need to know to become a brilliant illustrator, a great artist just from YouTube videos. You know.
It's like we said earlier. If only I had that when I was younger. But that'll continue on. You know, it didn't stop Michelangelo. He didn't have anything, you know, it seems, compared to what we have. With that David.
They did doing great works of art. I don't know. I think it's like I look at motivation and I look at purpose, and I think that everyone has an incredible amount of potential to be that cool Back to the Future dad. You know, so those two paths of being that, you know, lame, just watching the TV and, you know, ignoring his wife and hates his job, and then the one that's like, you know, doing the work he loves and is in a meaningful relationship and, you know, being creative and earns good money and isn't an asshole. You know, it's like that. Everyone has that capacity in their life. And, you know, anyone that's listening to this, it's like, I think that the best thing anyone can do for themselves is, I guess, have faith in your own ideas. Like, give yourself enough credit to be like, I'm having a good idea right now. It might not seem obvious to everyone else around you, but it's like you can make a living. I was talking to a friend about this who her name is Katie Silva, and she's one of the character designers on the Castlevania TV show on Netflix.
Oh yeah,
and she, you know, we're talking about this, and she draws cute anime boys for a living, you know. Like she draws kawaii anime boys, and for one perspective, maybe she should have been a lawyer. That would have made more money, but maybe not actually. And maybe following her genuine interest of just drawing cute anime boys led to more success than any other path could have for her, you know. And on paper, obviously, you know, drawing cute anime boys was a mistake, but obviously, you know, following through what actually happened, it it's been very good for her, you know.
Yeah, I think that organic nature of a path to artistic freedom and artistic, maybe even wealth, is the path I had. It's
Yeah,
organic. I never planned anything. I just
yeah,
always, I'm going to draw whether I'm in a cave or whether I'm in a mansion. I'm going to draw, and
yeah,
at the end of the day, it's just you and that 2D surface anyway. So it
yeah,
doesn't matter
right,
if you look around there and it's rubble or whether it's got golden toilets. It doesn't really matter. You're still there for most of your life,
yeah,
most of your working life, looking at the same thing as a poor person or a rich person all the
yeah,
time. So the art has to be valuable to you. It has
yeah,
to be that. But you know what? I was just thinking about when you said that about you just every once in a while you've just got to take a leap of faith and
yeah,
stop thinking about what should we definitely do or what is the most important thing. And there was a guy talking about how he had, I was just listening to it this morning, how he was doing an event, and it was years and years ago when Johnny Depp was on Jump Street on television, and he had Johnny Depp coming on as a speaker for that night
yeah,
at this event. They do it sort of like an additional income for actors and stuff. Could be even a political event. So he calls up at the last minute, Johnny Depp, and says he can't get out of his film shoot. And one of the guys in the creative team says, it's the guy goes, okay, well, what else have we got? We've lost Johnny Depp, and it's happening in a few hours. And the guy, one of the guys said, I could do something with chemicals and science.
yeah,
And the guy looked at him like, you're the biggest loser I've ever seen. And it was Bill Nye, the science
yeah,
guy. You know him?
right. Yeah,
He
yeah, of
was the guy.
course.
He was
Yeah,
just on this creative team of people. I don't know what he was
yeah,
doing then, but he wasn't yet Bill Nye, the science guy.
yeah,
And the guy looked back in retrospect and said to himself, if I'd have just had my mind open, you know,
yeah,
that would have been fabulous for
yeah,
Bill Nye, the science guy. That would have been his
right,
first gig right there.
yeah, right.
So, who was the artist you were talking about there?
Katie Silva.
Katie Sylvan, she took that organic leap and going, I like
Yeah,
this. And he's the same. He thought people would be really interested
yeah,
in, in his science, you
yeah,
know?
right.
And the other guy went, who's interested in that stuff? And now it's
Yeah,
incredibly, popular.
yeah, 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 yeah. Extremely famous, and
He
I
closed
again,
it.
I think it's like it doesn't necessarily matter what you're doing. It matters how well you do it, and
Yeah,
how, again, like if people can take some of the energy that you have from your subject and get it from you,
yeah,
like, again, part of the reason I really admire Stan Prokopenko is because he's taken something very boring, academic drawing and painting, and he's been able
yeah,
to make a massive YouTube channel out of it,
yeah,
and it's become popular. It's become like a little bit of a mainstream in the art education community,
yeah,
where from one perspective, maybe he should have done something else, like he wanted to be an animator, but instead he, made a YouTube channel.
yeah,
Um, and again, I think pursuing that genuine interest in what he actually cared about did a lot more positive for him and everyone else around him than if he had just followed the beaten path, you know.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, what he's done is amazing. It's an incredible achievement. It really is. And it's we gotta walk a fine line because obviously we're living in a reality here. We're in a capitalist society. We've got to there's rules.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah,
we have to. I've got to pay tax. I
yeah,
want to keep that. I remember a guy once years ago. He didn't pay his tax, and his friend says to him, "You better pay that tax because they're going to find you." He says,
yeah,
"Why should I give it to them? I earned it." Of
yeah,
course, he was hunted down, and
right,
and then he has to pay fines on top of that and all that
yeah,
business. So we're in this capitalist society. So we have to navigate it. We have to do it. That's the life we're
yeah,
in.
right,
And we can do that nihilistic thing and go, oh, it doesn't matter. Try and get them to come and take
yeah,
me. Well, they do. They will come and take you.
yeah,
They'll come
yeah,
and take you away.
yeah,
So we have to navigate that. But I think within that, what Stan did there is something I'm always very aware of. If something isn't quite gelling 100%,
yeah,
what else is it that you want to do? What else
yeah,
within, obviously, he's loving art. What is it that's just something else that's in that realm? And I
yeah,
do that too. That's the organic flow. I don't think if you haven't got the will to be organic, then you can't survive. You have to
yeah,
be organic. You
yeah,
have,
constantly changing stuff. Yeah. Well, and again, from one perspective, this stuff has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, drawing, and especially drawing the figure at a really high level. It's like, you know, there are people that have drawn the figure better than Stan ever could that lived 200 years ago, like John Singer Sargent, like whoever. You could go down the list of great artists, but it wasn't about who was doing the best figure drawings or the best drawings or the best teaching even. It was about the format that it was in and how it was presented,
Yeah.
and innovation was almost invented, like a new innovation came out of nowhere in a way that no one expected,
Yeah.
which was, video instruction and videos and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know you're wrestling with the idea of God and
Yeah.
does God exist and everything. And I've been wrestling with that all my life. And but I have great comfort in this, that if I don't believe in the bearded God, especially the first one, the one who was throwing frogs around and stuff. I like the next one. He's a bit more gentle. So let's say you have a God that makes you feel comfort in life, and the minute you start to go off the rails and don't believe that anymore, I've been on and off that rail 100 times. But what gives me really great comfort is that something exists. It has to. We're here. Are we? Are we really here? I'll give you, for instance, where I had a dilemma once. I was in a rainforest once. This is existentialism. I can't even say the word. I can't get that. Never can get my tongue around. My dad could never say ambulance. He always says ambulance. I could say existentialism.
Existentialism, yeah.
Yeah, I could never say it. So I remember being in a rainforest up in the north of Queensland here. And I was walking through, I was everything I expected, a rainforest. And then out of nowhere, a snake came along. And it had its head up, which was very unusual. It had its head up and it was moving around. I'd never seen a snake like it before. It had these very odd colors. And I thought, I really didn't expect that. I expected a snake because I'm already stomping my feet. Because that's what you're supposed to do, stomp your feet, and that scares the snakes away. And that's why the snake appeared. And I thought to myself, because I was wrestling with the concept, do I exist? And I thought, I exist because I did not expect that. I didn't expect that. And then I thought to myself, oh, of course, you put it there. You've made it so that you didn't expect it. I went, oh, there we go again. Yeah. And I thought, hold on a second, I've never seen a snake like that. And I have a book about Australian snakes. I'm going to go home, look in the book, and if that snake is in that book, then I didn't invent the snake. I exist. Yeah. And I went all the way home, and I got the book out, and there was the snake. And I went, I exist. And then I thought, oh, come on, you put it in the book too.
Yeah, right.
Put it in the book too.
Yeah, right.
So I've always got that. But what gives me the comfort is that, when they went to the moon, all the science fiction movies before they went to the moon showed people getting on the moon, right? And then they go, when we get back to Earth, they're not going to believe this. No science fiction writer on Earth predicted it would be televised in any of their novels. Nobody saw that coming. So there was something that you didn't even see coming. And, if you try to explain the internet to a caveman, or even to my little dog doesn't know what the internet is, no idea. Happy as Larry.
People that are alive right now, yeah.
Try to explain the internet to a caveman. It's gibberish. It's gibberish. So what gibberish to me in the future might be the, what created this entire thing? That gibberish in the future might explain it to me. So I'm confident that I exist, and that there's some godlike entity. Even in Star Wars, they don't say God; they say the Force, don't they?
Yeah, right.
There's something there that I am confident is there.
Well, I mean, I have a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, whenever I have acted like God exists, my life has gotten better.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that isn't believing that if there's a guy with a beard in the sky that's going to answer my prayers. It's more of like an optimism. It's like if I believe, I go out and I go for a walk and I live like there's meaning in the world. The meaning actually creates itself in front of me, manifests itself. Like if you go to a figure, like I started going to figure drawing workshops because I had a friend who suggested I started doing that if I wanted to become an artist when I was around 18 or 19 years old. So I started going to those and I just started meeting people. And from there, like just by going and spending my Saturdays figure drawing, I started meeting people. I met a friend named Taylor Olivis, who's done a couple stuff for Proco. And like I, you know, he did stuff through Proco through me, but like we just became really good friends. And then from there, we just, like I just started meeting more and more people. I started getting more into drawing. I found the Watts Atelier. I, you know, found Stan as well. I found Proco. And
Did you meet Stan at the Watts?
no, I met him through Marshall Vandroff actually at a Comic-Con.
Oh, and how did you know
But
Marshall?
so I guess I was just like, you know, just trying to find a purpose in life. And I was like, I guess I'm going to do art. That's what I really want to do. So I just started taking art classes all the time. I was interning at game studios. I was, you know, just trying to be a member of the art community, you know, going to figure drawing workshops all the time. And everywhere I went, I heard about Marshall, you know, whether it's at this game studio or figure drawing classes or wherever. People be like, oh yeah, my teacher, Marshall Vandroff. And eventually I was like, oh, I'm going to go out of my way to try and meet this guy. So I paid $50 for a workshop from him in our at the art. He would do these things at the Art Institute, just all around Southern California. So I took a workshop with him, and I made a point of staying after and talking with him and telling him essentially I was going to be his friend. And then, you know, like
you're my new
yeah, yeah, Marshall, I'm your friend now, and you know. He was very kind to me. You know, I am still a dumb kid, you know, but like he was like, oh, you know, did this, you know, wants to spend some time with me. We went on a couple walks, and then he and, you know, just became closer and closer. And then I helped him with a few projects. Like he really needed so he was going to teach a class up in Los Angeles, but he didn't have a ride up there. So he's like, Christian, can you drive me up there from Orange County? So every Tuesday or something for 10 weeks, I drove him up to LA and back. And then eventually he introduced me to Stan, and then Stan and I became friends, and I told Stan, I'm going to be your new best friend.
Another
and and then I offered to work for Stan for free for, you know, for months. I worked for Stan for free for about 3 months, just because I was curious about who he was and how he had built what he built. And you know, as I'm going down this path, I'm finding that if I'm just genuinely interested in what I'm doing and optimistic about it and approach it in a way that's not, that's actually genuine and not annoying, you know, people resonate with that, and they have given me opportunities, you know, and it's allowed me to interact with some of, you know, artists I really admire, you know, and it allowed me to travel around in this van. And it's allowed me to go and do things that, from one perspective, I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad, I'm so thankful I get to go and, you know, again, like have a conversation with you and have a conversation with all these other amazing artists. You know, it's like from one version, just like almost like a dream, you know.
Well,
and it all came. Well, yeah, and again, it's like it came from that genuine optimism, you know, that genuine belief in what the world could be, you know. And I, you know, I did come from a privileged background through my father, but I like to think that a lot of what I've been able to do for myself has been, like, I know my father's influenced me quite a bit, but a lot of it has just been through me pursuing this stuff myself, you know, pursuing opportunities that have been open to pretty much everyone else as well, you know.
At the end of the day, you know, we're all alone. There's no doubt about that. We're just one person alone for most of the time. And then we meet people. So you're always, you know, you've created that world yourself. And, you know, give your dad credit where it's due and everything. I think with, you know, like my dad was a builder, and, you know, part of it rubs off, you know, even though he was a different kind of mindset. Not so much now, though. We're getting closer and closer. Totally different mindset for me back then. I was all about creativity is important. And he didn't think it was at all. He thought it was nonsense, really. And so, even though he loved movies and he loved books, you know, that's all. Everything he loved was what I do. And so, but a bit of that rubbed off too. I think you're very lucky to have a dad that had, you know, that you could look at and say this can be done. Like my dad was self-employed. and nearly every other dad that I saw around the neighborhood wasn't. And so that alone taught me that you can actually employ yourself.
Yeah.
That's a concept that's beyond a lot of people, you know? And so I always went with that. I can employ myself. And it has been what, has driven me all the way through. And a part of me always said nobody owes me a living. And so that has driven me too. So I never really fear being unemployed because I would have to do that. I would have to I'd have to unemploy me. So your dad, having a dad that can influence you like that is a marvelous thing. But you've done it yourself. Beyond that, leaping off of the dad board. Can we say it's a dad board? Leaping off the dad board into the wilderness is all you now. That's all you.
Yeah.
And you've done it organically too. A little bit of organic in there.
Right.
You sought out Marshall. That's the part that you said I'm going to make that happen. But then you organically moved around within that plan, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, and I tell people like the greatest nepotism I have from my father is not the ability to, have connections or have specific jobs or anything. It's like a capacity to just go out and try stuff, like I can go and do anything,
Yeah. And
and
you wouldn't want that either. Like someone said once about, I can't remember, there's a designer in London and I think she's Mick Jagger's daughter.
yeah,
And somebody said disparagingly, I wonder how she got her start.
yeah,
So you don't want that either. You don't want
yeah,
to be, you want to be your father's son, but you don't want to be your father's, duplicate.
yeah,
You don't want to,
right.
you want your own path. You want to be who you are. And then
Yeah.
one day your dad pats you on the back and says, well done. Well done what you did.
Well, and I feel like every time I've taken things that have been unearned, taken opportunities too directly from him, they haven't worked out in a way that I would have that is ideal. It's like I either didn't work hard enough at them because I didn't care that much, or I just wasn't good enough. It was too much nepotism and I was too young, too unprepared. So I
Yeah.
just squandered those opportunities, which, in turn hurt my confidence and hurt my ability to come up with my own ideas. And I'm not saying this as a sad sack. I'm just saying um, like, I guess the more that I pursue the path of doing things and what I perceive the godly way, whatever way that is, the more it's worked out for me personally.
Yeah.
Um,
I think one of the biggest strengths in life, if you can garner it, is getting back on the horse.
yeah,
No matter how things fall apart, you get back on the horse again.
yeah,
As long as you've got your health and you can get back on that horse. I mean, I always think to myself, I've been homeless, I've been broke. I was broke at 36, right? And I met a guy that had a different mindset from me way before that. And he said, if you haven't made it by 30, you're never going to make it, right? This is what
yeah,
he said. And I remember looking at him at that time, and I thought he was a fantastic guy.
yeah,
But he was so driven and so economically in that world of, close the deal, that he
yeah,
was never truly happy or at peace. And I thought, wow. And after I got off, it sort of stuck with me. After 30, I went, am I a failure?
yeah,
Because I'm over 30 now and I haven't got where I expected. I haven't I haven't opened my box of books yet. You
yeah,
know? So I thought and that's just a modest dream, but it's a dream. And it's one of the dreams he says, whatever your dream is, if you haven't done it by 30, it's not going to happen. It's not true. And I remember at 36, I lost everything. It was a big economic crash, and I wasn't very financially astute and all that. Anyway, 36, nothing, gone, and picked myself back up again. But at that point, that was one of those points, Christian, where I went, nothing's a pretty cool hand. I went, wow, look at all these opportunities I have now. No mortgage because they took the house.
yeah,
Fantastic. I don't have to worry about that anymore.
yeah,
So I had that. And so I think one of my biggest strengths, and I think it's a strength that everyone should just lean on a little bit, is that you can get back on the horse again at any point.
yeah, right,
Because once upon a time, you had nothing. And you're
yeah,
just there again. That's fine. And if you're saying nothing in the terms of monetary stuff, that's not nothing. The monetary stuff is nothing to worry about. You have plenty. You're
yeah,
not starting from scratch again. You've got tons of experience. You've got tons of life experience and tons of whatever experience you had in your job or whatever it is you pursued. You're not starting from scratch. So get back on that horse.
absolutely. Well, and I was thinking about this. I think about this all the time, but you look at a guy like Warren Buffett, who's one of the wealthiest men on the planet, but he's older now, I
Yeah.
think he's in his 80s or 90s
Yeah, I
or
saw him the
something,
other day.
Yeah. And, you know, he might trade all of his wealth to be 22 and broke,
You bet you will. You bet you.
yeah,
I
and
would.
healthy, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, would you give up your ability to walk upstairs or take care of yourself, go to the bathroom by yourself for $1 billion, And it's like, there are people that have that level of wealth that are like, I would do anything in the world just to be able to walk down the street by myself, and feel like a normal person.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
My happiest days are still, back in those times when, I'm healthy now. I could run down the street past a teenager. But I remember the times when I could roadie America. I could roadie America and never stop,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
And having that is just the most amazing thing in the world. You bet
Yeah.
Warren Buffett would give me all his billions for that, the ability to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
You betcha.
Yeah. Um, anyways, my brain's starting to go a
Yeah,
little bit.
I could feel it. I
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
feel it. I was going to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
I think that's us,
Yeah. Yeah.
Christian. I think that's,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
you, it's your brain. For me, it's my stomach. I don't know if you've been hearing it.
Well, no, I can't. I don't do well with sugar, and I've been eating too much sugar recently with Stan's
You've been
birthday.
eating
So
sugar. No wonder your brain's frazzled.
yeah, I eat too much sugar. That's another thing. My vice is absolutely sugar, 100%. I
Well,
don't drink, I don't smoke, but sugar is and bad food is my
Well,
my
Christian, I was the sugariest boy in the world.
yeah,
Donuts, ice cream, especially ice cream.
yeah,
I never passed dessert. It was just
yeah,
when I was in the Navy and they used to bring the dinner out. All I was thinking about was eating that dinner so I could have dessert.
yeah,
And I was in the Navy, I was so lucky. They had five-star chefs on the boat
yeah,
because they wanted a career outside of the Navy. So they had to go to
yeah,
chef school and stuff. They cook anything up for you. And they had a
yeah,
big endless fridge. This was the
yeah,
BP. Big endless fridge. And they used to come out and bring me out the biggest desserts. They were just testing the
yeah,
desserts on me. Like six
yeah,
bananas
yeah,
and
crazy.
cherries and stuff. And people say you never eat that. Woof, all gone.
Yeah,
Because I was in the early 20s. And
yeah,
still not a sign of fat. Nothing at
yeah,
all. Still went out there and did all my day's work.
yeah,
But I tell you, that sugar business, I don't want to be a preacher. But
yeah.
I tell you, after a while, that catches up with you.
Absolutely. I'm trying to cut it, but
That's
again, it's like I'm yeah, again, 27. I think sugar and me hopefully have a short relationship because it is,
Well, I don't want to
definitely
scare you
not
any
dangerous.
further, but
Yeah,
when I was 28 and I was still eating those big sugary desserts,
yeah,
I was a guy in the studio much older than me, and he says, I don't know where you put that. I says, nothing ever changes. He says, how old are you? I says, 28. He says, oh, see you next year.
yeah,
He reckoned 28 was the year when all that stuff that has been no trouble tips the scales. He
yeah,
reckoned after 20, and you know what? He was right.
yeah,
That was the first time when I was 29 I started to go, hold on a second. It's getting a bit soft around the middle here, isn't it? What's
yeah,
going
right.
on? And I had to
Yeah,
work on it. Before that, I didn't
yeah,
have to do anything at all other than live.
yeah, right.
So yeah, sugar and I don't like I say I don't want to be preachy because go on and
No, no, I
enjoy your lovely
absolutely.
ice cream, but be careful of that sugar
I,
because
I honestly, the biggest thing for me is it affects my mood. It makes
yeah,
me super depressed and it makes me slow.
it does. It makes you slow.
Yeah, yeah,
There you go. You've got it early.
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
Christian, you lost a year.
yeah,
It's now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's totally fine. It's better sooner than later. But
You got in early.
yeah,
I have
yeah,
stopped. I've stopped eating sugar how you can. I mean, put it in everything. But I have
yeah,
stopped eating sweets and everything. And I thought I would miss them. I thought, oh
yeah,
God,
yeah,
how could I deprive myself of the most wonderful thing in the world? And now I just eat fruit, and it's so sweet now because I don't eat any sweets
yeah,
that it's better, and I don't
yeah,
have headaches, and I
yeah,
don't get like you said, you get all slow. I'm not
yeah,
that anymore. I've
yeah,
reversed the clock just by stopping eating sugar.
yeah,
So there's no doubt. I'm the experiment.
yeah,
Sugar, it's no good. It's no good.
yeah,
And yogurt tastes like ice cream now.
yeah, right.
Even unsweetened yogurt.
Yeah, I've had moments in my life. I mean, living in a van has made it more difficult to not eat sweets because I don't have the ability to prepare meals as easily. But
Yeah.
um, there have been moments in my life when I've been a lot healthier in terms of my diet and definitely was better. Eating fruit was enough sugar to, it was enough,
Yeah.
but
And it's a different kind of sugar too. People say, "Oh, it's still sugar." It's not. It's not the same
yeah,
as sugar. There's no
yeah,
way. I don't feel bad at all when I eat fruit. I just
yeah,
go, "Oh, that was nice," and
yeah,
still have a clear head.
yeah,
So we didn't touch on that subject. Good
yeah,
job we got there in the end, because
yeah,
artists, they're sedentary creatures.
yeah,
I've been sitting in this chair for 2 hours, so have you, and that can continue. So we got to cut the sugar down.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, again, I appreciate taking the time. I really enjoyed talking with you.
And me too, Chris. It's been a
Yeah,
joy, an absolute
yeah,
joy.
yeah.
I think you're a true
Um,
conversationalist.
Thank you so much. I'd love to come and visit you at some point.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, when it makes sense.
Anytime. And I'll tell you what makes you a great conversationalist, Christian. You're not running off notes.
Yeah,
When you see what are considered professional people on television and they've got notes and they're just checking the list off and they're not
yeah,
even listening to the answers to the questions. I think that's a great
yeah.
gift you've got. And
Oh,
if you
thank
want to
you.
look at a bad conversationalist, have a look at a guy called Russell Hardy
Yeah,
interviewing Grace Jones back in the
yeah,
80s,
yeah.
where she turns around and beats him over the head.
Oh man, wow. Yeah,
Because he
I think
just he was just doing
just wasn't
notes.
listening.
He wasn't
Yeah,
listening.
yeah,
He was an asshole. He
right.
was
Yeah,
asking the question and not listening to the answer.
yeah,
That's who
right.
he was.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, you're a great conversationalist, Christian. Well done.
Thanks so much. How should people follow you, by the way?
Oh yeah, well if you type in the Anatomy of Style there, or Patrick J. Jones Illustrator, anywhere at all, that's me.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I've got
Well,
a website, pjartworks.com. Do we still have to say .com?
I don't know. I think people just look up your name; they'll be
Yeah.
able to find you. But
PJ.
Patrick is a great artist and illustrator and teacher and great person. I highly recommend learning from him if you have the opportunity to. You have a course on Proco, right?
I have,
Oh,
yeah. How to draw the
yeah,
fancy female figure. That's going very
yeah,
well. It's going very
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Nice to do a
Really check it
collab.
out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask. We did the Ukraine thing. I didn't see the figures on the books that were sold or anything like that. How would I see that, Christian?
I can look it up after we're done talking, and I can send you the figures or
It'd be
the.
nice to see if
Absolutely.
if it made a kind of dent at all. That'd be
I
nice.
think it did. Yeah. Well, and it plus plus it's raising awareness for the whole thing, and
Yeah.
it's yeah. I think that's one of our more popular live streams. Actually, I think it has around 30,000
Really?
views or something. Yeah, yeah.
Oh well, I won't take credit for that because I had two co-pilots in there.
Well, again, it's
Three.
like the range is between 14,000 and 30,000, and again, yours is on the higher end, so if people
Yeah.
are
Not
interested
that
in getting
numbers
this.
matter. Not that
Yeah,
numbers
and
matter.
then, yeah, the
But
numbers don't matter.
if you could say them again quite loudly, that would be great.
Yeah, yeah. Patrick Jones is the most popular person.
No, no.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
that's nice to hear though. It's a nice
yeah,
affirmation, but it's just a number, but it's
yeah,
still nice.
yeah.
It's nice that
Absolutely.
'cause I didn't see the remarks until after.
Yeah,
The people that were because the questions were being taken and John was putting them back
yeah,
in.
yeah,
So I didn't see it. So I wanted to say thanks to everyone that watched that and put comments that I didn't see. And I read them later and I thought they were wonderful comments. I thought they were so funny as well. So thanks everyone that watched that podcast and commented, which I would have said something if I could have seen them, but I didn't. But I saw them later and I appreciated it.
yeah.
There you go.
Thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we will talk soon.
Excellent, Christian. Have a good one. I'll
Sounds
press the
good.
button like a bad dad.
Cool.
I'll
Thanks.
end this.
Okay,
All
cool.
right.
Thanks. Okay, bye.
Bye bye.